Chapter 754. A grand event like the Bali Fashion Week also gathered many celebrities and even politicians. For example, French President Hollande, who had just taken office this year, also attended the opening ceremony in the Carousel Hall of the Louvre. Fortunately, leaders were not allowed to speak like this in foreign countries. If Hollande really went up and talked for an hour or two, he would definitely be scolded to death when he went back. The opening ceremony of Fashion Week was actually the debut ceremony of the chief designers of major brands. Chanel's Karl Marx, the Empress Dowager Lagerfeld, LV's Marc Jacob, Marco, and Givenchy's Riccardo walked out one by one and waved to the audience. Every designer that came out received thunderous applause. It wasn't an exaggeration to call him the Caesar Emperor of the fashion world. Although he was almost 80 years old, his hair was white, but he was still full of energy. He wore a sparkling diamond-studded suit jacket, a high-collared shirt and black skinny jeans. He wore black fingerless gloves and his signature pure black sunglasses. For some reason, his belt had been replaced with a string of shiny pearls. The old man's clothes were always so classic, but there was always a little novelty that made people crazy. Without needing anyone's support, he straightened his back and walked around the field in an imposing manner. Everywhere he went, whether they were Chanel employees or fans, they couldn't help but cheer and clap for him. Karl didn't say a word, didn't move, and didn't even smile. However, his experience and grasp of fashion were enough to firmly control the momentum of the scene in his hands. He looks like the Terminator. Poplar Fruit watched from afar, his heart filled with emotion. Poplar Fruit had enough presence on the catwalk, but compared to Grandpa Sheng, he was still far behind. This couldn't be helped. There were probably not many people in the fashion industry in the world who could compete with the old man. This was a temperament that had been honed over the years and cultivated through his own time. I sing for the world tyrant. Artel was not qualified to walk around the hall, but Poplar Fruit could still faintly feel Artel's inner desire. Didn't he also want to have a moment of glory and the admiration of the entire audience? He had been concentrating on his cultivation for dozens of years. Many people thought that Artel was not good enough. There were even many negative opinions in the newspaper about Artel. Artel was already in his 50s, almost 60 years old. How could he keep up with the trends of the times? Poplar Fruit did not see it that way. What is fashion? Was it a flag that represented the trend? However, many of the fashions released during the Fashion Week were only sold in some of the more open cities. The public's taste and pursuit were still far from the fashion scene. Therefore, fashion was a very mysterious thing. It wasn't that it wasn't fashionable if it couldn't keep up with the trend. Wasn't there a period of retro fashion a few years ago? Besides, it wasn't that Artel couldn't keep up with the trend. He was in the middle of the trend. Poplar Fruit felt that Artel's understanding of clothes was really good. Before, he had lacked inspiration and could only make clothes of an average level. Now, didn't he have inspiration? Look at this series of splash ink fashion designs, isn't it? Even the simple ink dots had been used by him. In time, Artel would definitely be able to walk in this palace of art, under the eyes of the whole world. Poplar Fruit believed in him. The opening ceremony didn't last long. With the departure of political celebrities such as Hollande and the Queen of England, and the emergency arrangement of the staff, the fashion show in the middle of the hall was ready. The first wave of performances officially began at 10 o'clock. Givenchy was not considered a big name in front of Chanel and LV, so the order of its performances was a bit awkward. Chanel opened the show, LV was the finale in the evening, and Givenchy was the one who had just returned from the intermission in the afternoon. The clothes that Chanel showed this year were really beautiful. Poplar Fruit felt that it was in line with Artel's philosophy. That was, the simple patterns had extremely complex changes. Even the same kind of clothes could be made into hundreds of different shapes. Like a dress, it could be designed as a white skirt, but the shoulders and the ends of the hem were fluffy and spongy lace. Speaking of which, it seemed that this year, Karl wanted to focus on the clothes that looked like water. The frills on this dress looked like sponge, and the colorful ribbons on the next dress looked like seaweed. If one didn't see it with their own eyes, it would be hard to imagine how he could make people feel as if they were swimming in the bottom of the sea without sketching out the appearance of the creatures in the sea. Later, It was said that Carl used fabrics that he didn't even know what they were for some of the clothes. These fabrics could let the light directly pass through the lines of the clothes, making this series of clothes show the colorful color of fritillary. It was hard to compare Artel's design with Carl's. After all, the two series of clothes were designed from different directions. Artel used simple colors of black, white, and gray to create a two-dimensional or three-dimensional world. Carl, on the other hand, used the combination of design and materials to draw out a lifelike world of water for you. In terms of creativity, Artel might be better, but in terms of presentation, Carl was more experienced and astute. Of course, fashion was never just a set of clothes. After all, it was worn by people. Sometimes, the role of people was not less than that of clothes. In this regard, Poplar Fruit felt that Chanel was a little weak, because Chanel's main market was women's clothing. From the beginning to the end, Poplar Fruit had not seen a single male model. Looking at it, he couldn't help but feel a little tired. Not only that, but the femininity of women lasted for 3 whole hours. Even if there were some gender-neutral clothes, when worn by Chanel's models, why would they feel affectionate and seductive? This might be a chance for Givenchy. If the audience was tired of looking at women's clothes, they might find a balance in Givenchy's clothes, or they might find the familiar masculinity. After watching Chanel's show, Poplar Fruit suddenly felt a strong sense of confidence. However, during this period, there was still an hour to reorganize. During this time, celebrities close to Chanel would take photos in the show, and then Givenchy's staff would quickly and deftly change the stage background designed by them. During this time, Poplar Fruit had no time to visit Kiki or take photos with Mr. Zhou, the spokesperson of Chanel in China. He needed to touch up his makeup and make the final preparations. Tidy up these clothes. You'll have to change as soon as you come down. The pace was getting faster and faster. The staff serving Poplar Fruit quickly shuttled through the crowd, like soldiers in a fortress. The war was about to start. Chapter 755. At noon, the Carousel Hall was once again filled with new audiences. Because of Chanel's departure, there were some empty seats in the auditorium. Therefore, some fashion buyers who had gotten tickets but were not qualified to watch the opening ceremony came in one after another, filling up the remaining empty seats. Speaking of which, most of the celebrities were there to join in the fun and expand their social circle. Only these fashion buyers were the ones who really knew the business. Therefore, it was not necessarily a bad thing to have them in the audience. Therefore, in the audience, Poplar Fruit did not notice that in a remote corner, there were 2 yellow-skinned people sitting together. The man was wearing a baseball cap and a pair of sunglasses, holding a camera as long as a cannon barrel in his hand, looking very low-key. The woman was dressed in a white, pleated dress. Her beauty was enough to attract a lot of attention, but because of her position, her indifferent eyes and silent expression, she was like a stone sinking into the sea when she sat in the crowd. She was silent. She glanced around the Givenchy stage, and then didn't move again. That oppressive and cold aura. There was no need to guess that she was Duan Xueqing. Duan Xueqing had only been in Bali for a few days. She did not speak French and was not good at socializing, so naturally, she did not know that Poplar Fruit was in the teeth of the storm. The man next to her was Pai Dinwan. After he met up with Duan Xueqing, he had been staying in a hotel booked by the Duan family's boutique. It was not because the Duan family's boutique was awesome that they were able to get tickets to the main stage of the opening ceremony. These tickets were actually sent out by Givenchy, because the clothes designed by Artel had a lot of Chinese elements. Although they claimed that they were not trying to open up the Eastern market, they still paid attention to what they should. The top-ranked boutiques in the country received invitations, and the Duan family magically received 2 more invitations. In fact, those invitations were obtained by the masterminds behind the leak of Poplar Fruit's information. They were snatched from other boutiques. Therefore, the Duan family sent 3 people to the Carousel Hall. One of them was the shopkeeper, and the other 2 were Duan Xueqing, who was purely a spectator, and Pai Dinwan, who was half bodyguard and half cameraman. Duan Xueqing did not sense any conspiracy. At this moment, her mind was not as calm as her expression. Poplar Fruit had mentioned it before, And Duan Xueqing knew that Poplar Fruit would be participating in Givenchy's Bali Fashion Week this year. She just didn't know if she would see Poplar Fruit at the opening show. Perhaps it was a woman's magical sixth sense, but Duan Xueqing felt that Poplar Fruit should also be here. Originally, she thought that she could accept everything and calm down. But now, like the spring water after the glacier melted, it surged and gradually converged into a surging river. She looked forward and did not notice that Pai Dinwan was also looking at her with a complicated expression behind his glasses. Duan Xueqing thought that Pai Dinwan was dressed in his usual photo-taking attire. In fact, that was not the case. Today, Pai Dinwan came over with a lot of courage and the risk of being discovered. Pai Dinwan had previously scammed more than 20 newspaper companies and made a lot of money from them. Presumably, those reporters who had been scammed by him held a grudge against him. More than 20 newspaper companies. Even if one used their toes to think, they would know how large the number was. Among the reporters present and surrounding the carousel hall, there were definitely many from these 20 newspaper companies. Pai Dinwan did not know if there would be a few reporters who had met him when he made the deal. He knew that if they met, with the amount of hatred he had at that time, the other party would definitely discover him easily. Then the outcome would be unimaginable. But there was no other way. He had to come. Putting aside the fact that he still had that damned mission to complete today, he also didn't want Duan Xueqing to go to Carousel Hall alone. Her old lover was there. Besides, wasn't his identity a cameraman specially hired by the Duan family? If he did not do anything and hid in the hotel all day, he would be exposed sooner or later. Fortunately, when he went out today, Pai Dinwan changed his attire. He wore a low-profile cap and held a large camera that could cover his face. It would probably be difficult to recognize him. Also, at this time, the attention of the reporters was on the stage and the middle seats where many celebrities were gathered. He was still considered safe. However, when he saw Duan Xueqing's calm face and fluctuating eyes, Pai Dinwan felt that he really should not have brought her here. He should not have brought her to Bali. His heart hurt a little. Really, Pai Dinwan felt that he had fallen deeper and deeper. Originally, he had only promised a friend to cooperate with the power behind him to put on a show. However, this show was surprisingly long. Furthermore, when he was drinking tea with Duan Xueqing, he accidentally fell in love with this girl who had always been very quiet. Why did he fall in love with her? Pai Dinwan was very puzzled. In the past 8 years of his bachelor life, he had not experienced the feeling of being moved for a long time. Then this time he fell in love with Duan Xueqing, who was 10 years younger than him. However, he had never thought that his ideal type was an iceberg like Duan Xueqing. He still remembered his inexperienced first love and heart-wrenching second love. They were both cheerful girls who loved to laugh and play. Among them, his second love, who he loved to death and broke up with in the end, was a backpacker who often played in the mountains and overseas. It could be said that no matter where Duan Xueqing looked, she was different from the girls he had liked. Well, except for her beauty. However, he fell in love with Duan Xueqing not because of her beauty, right? Pai Dinwan felt that when he sat quietly in the tea room and drank tea with Duan Xueqing, it made him think of eternity. It was really comfortable. Although they did not talk, they did not have the impetuousness of the secular world. It made him feel that his heart and soul were healed and rested. However, falling in love with a person he should not love, falling in love with the target of his mission, and falling in love with a woman who he might not be worthy of in his life, was a mistake. Pai Dinwan was deeply aware of this point. Agreeing to come to Bali in advance was also an escape. However, he did not expect that his escape would not succeed. He saw Duan Xueqing looking forward to Poplar Fruit's appearance. Pai Dinwan was jealous and very uncomfortable in his heart. In addition to Duan Xueqing, there was actually another woman in the seating area waiting for Poplar Fruit's appearance. Princess Charlotte. Today, she was wearing a green off-shoulder dress and a white sun hat with a long brim. She was also very fashionable. Although Gucci also had its own show in Bali Fashion Week, it was an Italian brand after all. It did not have a place on the main stage of the opening ceremony. Therefore, Princess Charlotte had the time to leave the brand she endorsed to attend Givenchy's main show. While chatting with her acquaintances around her, She looked at the Givenchy show with her beautiful eyes and said in her heart, "It seems that guy is going to appear, right? The newspaper said that he is a genius. I'm really curious to see how he has grown in the past half a month." Chapter 756. Ladies and gentlemen. The host wasn't present, but his voice was broadcasted throughout the hall. Originally, there was still some buzz in the hall because the VIPs were taking the time to greet people they knew and didn't know. When they heard the host's call, they knew that Givenchy's main stage was about to begin. No one dared or was willing to disturb the order of such a high-class event. They quickly took their seats, and the hall quieted down. I am honored to introduce Givenchy to all of you. Givenchy. The opening usually had a background introduction. Although everyone present was a veteran in the fashion industry, the introduction was just icing on the cake. However, when it came to Givenchy's past glory, under the influence of a few supporters, many smiled and clapped their hands. Now let Givenchy's new stage lead us into a brand new world of art. The host really dared to brag. Even Chanel didn't dare to say it was a world of art. Regardless of the audience's reaction, the rhythmic music began, and Givenchy's main stage began. The first to appear was naturally the Birds of Paradise collection launched by the chief designer, Riccardo. The first two models appeared side by side, causing the audience to gasp in surprise. It was impossible for an artist to completely change his style. It was as absurd as asking Old Man Whitestone to paint a dark sunflower, or asking Van Gogh to paint fish, prawns, insects, and crabs. Although Riccardo didn't completely change his style, it was far from his previous style. One had to know that Riccardo's previous designs were very gothic, especially last year's Dog Head series, which brought out the dark aesthetic to the fullest. This year's Birds of Paradise collection didn't have a trace of black. The pure white and the vibrant green ran through the design concept. Coupled with the bright and flamboyant Birds of Paradise flowers, Riccardo once again changed people's perception of him. Before they had time to savor it, Riccardo's first two sets of clothes and the models walked off the stage. Poplar Fruit walked past them on a world-class runway for the first time. That's right. Poplar Fruit was the third to appear. The main thing was that they couldn't display all of the clothes in the beginning. According to the design process, they had to display all of Givenchy's collections at the beginning and make a promotional appearance. Next, Givenchy would arrange the clothes according to the type of clothing, such as long skirts, short skirts, casual wear, business suits, half-length suits, accessories, and so on. Then he would let the different series of clothes take turns on the stage. On one hand, it would reduce the aesthetic fatigue of the audience, and on the other, it would give Poplar Fruit enough time to change. With a nimble rhythm, Poplar Fruit walked onto the stage wearing the second main outfit of Artel's Splash Ink collection. She saw that he was wearing casual trousers with layers of ink, and a high-collared long shirt with the same pattern of ink bamboo-like patterns. The buttons were double-breasted, making him look even more ancient. His clothes gave off a celestial aura, and he looked like an elegant celestial. With a height of 1.88 meters and a perfect figure that was close to the golden ratio, Yonghua had already attracted a lot of attention just by looking at her physique. The bright light shone on his face, which had been made up by Matisse, and the handsome lines, high nose, and eyes that were as lively as the stars. It made people suddenly feel that Poplar Fruit, with a long sword, was a prince from ancient times. Even Princess Charlotte couldn't help but praise him in her heart. What a handsome man! Of course, different people had different impressions of the prince they were talking about. But many people felt that this prince was a Western prince. Although Poplar Fruit had a head of black hair, under Victor's meticulous ironing, it was fine and slightly curly, giving people an inexplicable sense of Chinese and Western handsomeness. Of course, except for a few people, more people paid attention to the model's performance, and how well he fit the clothes. Of course, there was no problem with the matching. Just as Artel had boasted in front of the reporters before, Leon is the most suitable model in the world for this series of clothes that I have designed. Poplar Fruit didn't need to simulate anything. His own temperament was a perfect match for the clothes. As for the model's performance, Poplar Fruit's appearance was almost stunning. His impeccable walking posture completely broke people's previous impression of him as a rookie model. Look at the steps he took, It seemed that every step was just right for the rhythm, directly penetrating people's hearts. Different from other models' firm and powerful steps, Poplar Fruit's steps seemed to have changed for the clothes. Although they looked as firm as before, they were faintly more agile. Yes, the feeling of agility was like the bamboo leaves in the bamboo forest swaying in the wind. With this agility, the whole set seemed to have been sublimated. Unbelievable. Many buyers were amazed. Their professional vision allowed them to immediately discover the extraordinariness of this set of clothes. Compared to the buyers in Europe and America, the buyers in East Asia were more excited. They not only wrote down their own comments in their notebooks, but also secretly identified this set of clothes as one of the clothes that must be introduced after the fashion week. If we hang this model's photos in the store, it will definitely sell well. The master of the Duan family's shop was particularly excited. He had already begun to plan for the following negotiations. There were 3 people from the Duan family, and he was the only one who was serious. Duan Xueqing's mood was a bit strange. The moment Poplar Fruit appeared, although her face was still cold, her eyes were as bright as the sun rising from the sea. At this moment, Poplar Fruit was not as low-key and dull as before. He was like an ancient inkstone covered with dust, shining under the spotlight. But for some reason, Duan Xueqing's eyes dimmed a lot. Perhaps because of this brilliance, she suddenly felt a little strange. Was it because she had been away from him for too long? Pai Dinwan noticed Duan Xueqing's mood swings. His heart was full of feelings, and his brows gradually knitted into a knot. Ex-boyfriend. Pai Dinwan suddenly asked Duan Xueqing in her ear. Duan Xueqing's body stiffened. After a while, she slowly relaxed. Her cold and charming side profile was facing Pai Dinwan. She didn't look at him, but slightly shook her head. Senior. The 2 short words were still so concise and neat. Duan Xueqing pursed her lips and didn't seem to speak. Chapter 757. That's my papa. Kiki was still sleepy and sitting with Sister Luo Danny. As soon as her father appeared, she seemed to have sensed it and turned to look at the tea stage. With a shiver, the little girl immediately became excited. No wonder Kiki was so excited. She had been sitting here early in the morning with Uncle Beckham and his family. From time to time, people came to disturb them, but there was no trace of her father. If Sister Luo Danny hadn't said that her father would definitely go on stage in the afternoon, Kiki would have made a fuss. Shoo. Luo Danny raised her little finger. Kiki, you can't speak loudly. It will affect everyone. Kiki also raised her left and right fingers to her mouth. She followed suit, lowered her voice, shrank her little head and said, Sister Luo Danny, look at my papa. The little girl didn't feel guilty at all. Instead, her face was full of smiles, as bright as a flower. Is he really your father? Victoria, who heard Kiki's voice, turned her head and asked. She felt a little surprised. She knew that Poplar Fruit had been in the limelight recently. According to the previous reports about the relationship between Ardal and Poplar Fruit, and the relationship between Kiki, my daughter from China, and Ardal's granddaughter, she probably guessed that Kiki and Poplar Fruit should be a family. Yes, he's Kiki's papa. Kiki also looked at Victoria with some confusion in her eyes, as if to say, yes, why do you think there's a problem? Victoria was the coolest aunt and mother she had ever seen. Although she gave birth to 4 children, she maintained her figure very well, and her usual dressing was very fashionable and handsome. However, Kiki felt that Victoria was very fierce to her brothers and didn't let them go out to play. Sister Bebe is the best. Kiki thought of the gentle and kind Sister Bebe again. Papa said that we'll go to the United States to see Sister Bebe in a few days. Hee, I'm so happy. Although it was very exciting, it only took a dozen seconds to go back and forth. Yang Guo went down in the blink of an eye. Kiki couldn't see her father and pouted unhappily. Haha, don't be unhappy. Your father's performance was great. Beckham pulled out a hand, patted Kiki's little head, and said, Look, so many people are applauding for him. It's really good. Victoria's sense of fashion, which could be seen from the way the children were dressed. This outfit is nice, David. I think you can wear it. I think it's good to change your style occasionally. Besides, don't you have a lot to do in China? This outfit should make you even more popular. As the couple chatted, little Seven held her father's hand and walked around the seats. Children were all like this, unable to settle down. Although Chi-Chi was also sitting down, if it wasn't for Luo Danny holding her hand, Chi-Chi also wanted to walk around and play with little Seven. Ugh. Xiao-Chi wobbled to Kiki and stuck out her little tongue. Unfortunately, she didn't know how to blow, so she could only make an explosive sound. After blowing, she sucked on her fingers and giggled. Kiki didn't want to be outdone. She stuck out her tongue and made a puff sound, which made Xiao-Chi shake off her father's hand and laugh happily. Many times, Kiki's height and intelligence would make others think that she was my daughter, who was 3 or 4 years old. In fact, Kiki was only 1.5 years old. Xiao-Chi's childishness and naivety still existed in Kiki. Xiao-Chi grabbed the corner of Kiki's clothes and stabilized her weak legs. She grinned and continued to stick out her tongue. The two of them played back and forth, and had a lot of fun. However, the Beck's family didn't quite understand what was so fun about it. "Kiki, your father is here again." Fortunately, Luo Danny's exclamation attracted Kiki's attention again. Sigh. Really? Kiki looked at her father with joy. This time, Poplar Fruit wore a formal suit on stage. Serious referred to the style of the suit. It was a very common slim-fit suit. Although it was a white jacket and black pants, no one would say that this suit was from a street stall. The fit and exquisite workmanship determined the value of this handmade suit. However, what attracted the attention of the audience was the splash ink pattern on the white jacket. At first glance, it really looked like someone had spilled ink all over an ink bottle. The ink dots were scattered and only followed the principle of some rays. However, if one looked carefully, they would realize that these strange ink dots actually formed some patterns. Some classical mathematical, physical, and chemical patterns were vividly displayed on the body. What made many people unable to hold back their exclamations was Poplar Fruit's temperament. That's right, although Poplar Fruit didn't change much this time, because of the clothes, his scholarly temperament seemed to have been magnified. This was a complete change from the Poplar Fruit from before. "He's so handsome." Victoria couldn't help but praise, which made Bex cast a jealous glance at her. Poplar Fruit's scholarly temperament, coupled with the suit and his slightly curly hair, made him look like a real teacher from the Palace of Knowledge. No, in this Palace of Art, Poplar Fruit was a senior professor holding a book and standing on the stage, talking endlessly about the development of human art for thousands of years. However, at this time, everyone would ask themselves, among the scholars, was there a man as handsome as Poplar Fruit? Almost none. One had to know that most of the top geniuses were ugly. Today, Poplar Fruit seemed to have refreshed everyone's understanding. He redefined the handsomeness of a scholar, and also changed the common understanding of Westerners towards Asians, short and stupid. Perhaps someone would say, "Says who?" There's a handsome professor in South Korea, who makes the whole of Asia kneel before him. Then the author would definitely jump out, and slap them back to square one. What a joke. You from the Stars hadn't even started filming yet. Perhaps, the later screenwriter was inspired by Poplar Fruit's show and came up with this idea, who knows? Kiki. When little Seven saw that little Missy wasn't playing with her anymore, she became unhappy and started making a fuss. She pulled Chi-Chi's hand and started calling out. However, little Seven still couldn't call out Chi-Chi's full English name, so she could only call out the first syllable. Papa went back again. Kiki wasn't very happy, because her father came out for less than half a minute, and then went backstage. Although the cool uncle and auntie beside them were praising her father, Kiki was still a little unhappy, and even ignored little Seven. Chapter 758. It's burning. The reporters from The Sun who were sitting in an enclosed area with their press passes felt like their ears were being slapped again and again. It was a burning pain. Before Givenchy started his speech, he proudly told his peers, "Just watch this for yourself today. My prophecy won't be wrong. Poplar Fruit, a Leon, will definitely die a horrible death." Everyone knew that the Sun was the one who worked the hardest to slander Poplar Fruit in the neutral camp. No one knew what was going on. For many years, the Sun had given people the impression that they were black-bellied, vengeful, and had a sharp tongue. They could even turn white into black. However, the Sun did have their own strengths. Otherwise, they wouldn't have become a giant in the European newspaper industry. When people in the same industry met, they would respond to them verbally, but they would still feel contempt for them in their hearts. Next up was Givenchy's main stage. Everyone gave face to their boss and didn't even respond to him. They let the Sun do their own solo show. In the end, not only did this guy's mouth not spare them, he even sent a tweet to predict that Poplar Fruit's performance wouldn't be outstanding. To be precise, he wrote, "Trash is still trash. Even if Givenchy supports him, it won't change this fact. Just watch, he'll destroy Givenchy's main stage today. If I were Givenchy, I'd leave him for the last stage. No one would pay attention to him then. Sigh, Givenchy won't really do that, right? Haha." In the end, less than 10 minutes later, the face slapping came. Not only did Poplar Fruit go on stage, but he was also the second to go on stage. His performance won the applause of the audience. The Sun reporter hatefully deleted the tweet he sent 10 minutes ago and changed it to a new one. "Oh, Givenchy let Leon go on stage second? Seriously, Leon is really fucking lucky. Just watch, he won't do it a second time. It's only because of the uniqueness of this suit that he can perform so well." Well, this time he continued to put his face forward to be hit. Moreover, it was not enough to hit the left side. He even turned his right face over and told the other party, "Come on, hit here. It'll look better if both sides are swollen." In less than 5 minutes, Poplar Fruit was back on the stage. He had changed into a new outfit backstage in just a few minutes. This time, the suit won him another round of applause. This time, if anyone dared to call Poplar Fruit a rookie model, the audience would definitely disagree. The Sun's reporter's face turned green as if he had really been slapped in the face. He sneaked a glance to his left and right, then lowered his head to delete the tweet he had posted 5 minutes ago. He then said sourly, "Givenchy is really out of talent. They actually let a newbie play twice in a row. I think they'll definitely become the biggest joke in tomorrow's newspaper." It was unknown whether Givenchy would become a joke or not, but what he didn't know was that he had already become the most humiliating person on the internet. The initiator of this was a small newspaper. He had been holding back his laughter as he took screenshots of the 3 tweets from the Sun's reporter. He then quickly added photos of the scene and his own interpretation, then reposted it on Twitter. There were already a lot of people paying attention to the Bali Fashion Week. His tweet was quickly forwarded by many people. This time, the man from the Sun became the target of everyone's slaps. They really enjoyed reposting it with a face-slapping emoji. In less than half an hour, the tweet had been forwarded more than 8 million times. It was one of the most popular tweets of the day, excluding the tweets of celebrities and celebrities. It was as if the whole world was discussing with relish how many times the Sun would be slapped in the face by Poplar Fruit. At this moment, whether it was the Sun's reporter or Yang Guo, they were all in the dark. The Sun's reporter clenched his fists, trying to find a loophole from Yang Guo's side that he could continue to slander her. As for Poplar Fruit, how could he know about the existence of such a clown? Even if he knew, he would just smile calmly and ignore it directly. Poplar Fruit had already performed 5 outfits. Even Kiki had begun to adapt to the rhythm of her father appearing from time to time. At this time, he could finally take a break and take a breath. Yes, Poplar Fruit also felt a little tired at this time. Going on stage was really incomparable with rehearsals. If you didn't go on stage for real, you would never feel the pressure and fear of the big stage. Not to mention Poplar Fruit, even the old models who had been on the international catwalk for more than 5 years almost had flaws. There was a female model in front of him. Perhaps she was too nervous when she went on stage, so she tripped while walking. Fortunately, she was very experienced. She adjusted in time and endured the pain to finish the whole show. However, after she came down, she burst into tears. It turned out that she had sprained her ankle at that moment. She didn't know how much perseverance supported her to walk the whole show calmly and accurately as usual. After all, she was wearing high heels. How did she manage to endure the excruciating pain of spraining her ankle? Poplar Fruit didn't know, because he went on stage after her. After he came down, he saw that her ankle was swollen. Because Poplar Fruit was not scheduled to go on stage for the following dress series, he had nearly 20 minutes to rest. After taking off his clothes, he walked over to see what was going on. No, you can't walk for a few days. The doctor who rushed over pressed her with ice cubes and shook his head to Muen's chief director. Muen patted the crying female model on the shoulder to comfort her. Then he turned to his assistant and said, "Let the substitute go." The female model cried even more sadly. It was very difficult for her to get the chance to walk on the main stage. Although the female model was injured, she still had 2 shows to do today. It wasn't cruel. Givenchy's main stage show couldn't be stopped because of her, right? At this time, the substitute model that had been brought over came in handy. Poplar Fruit walked up and whispered to the doctor, "Let me have a try." The doctor looked at him strangely and made way for him. Poplar Fruit squatted down and moved the ice pack away. He said to the female model, "Don't be afraid. I'll give you a massage. This is a traditional Chinese massage technique. It will help your injury." How could it have anything to do with traditional Chinese medicine? Poplar Fruit didn't know much about traditional Chinese medicine. He just used his internal strength to transfer it through his fingers to help the unlucky female model get rid of the blood stasis and reduce the blood flow. Even so, the female model felt so comfortable that she almost cried out. Then the swelling on her ankle disappeared a lot. Hearing the noise, Muen looked back and asked, "Leon, can you let her go on stage again?" The female model looked at Poplar Fruit with hope. Poplar Fruit shook his head and smiled. "How can it be? I'm just relieving it so that she can recover sooner. As for when she can fully recover, it depends on her physique. She can't do it today." However, Poplar Fruit still gave the female model hope. Maybe she didn't have to worry about her job. Maybe tomorrow or the day after, she could return to the runway again. Chapter 759. Poplar Fruit massaged the female model for a few minutes. He was so tired that his forehead was sweating. After all, it was hard to release internal force. Now his internal force had improved a lot. When he had treated Kiki's injury in his hometown, he had almost collapsed from exhaustion. Fortunately, it was Poplar Fruit's turn. Poplar Fruit hurried back to change into new clothes. The female model was sent to the hospital by her assistant, leaving a group of models looking at Poplar Fruit with respect. Yang Guo had never been able to make these models put down their pride and respect him. Even though he had already proven his strength on the runway, he still couldn't do it. After all, the models present were not nobodies. What really made them respect Poplar Fruit was that Poplar Fruit had helped the female model. These models had gone through countless setbacks to get to where they were today. When they saw that the female model had lost her chance to appear in this world-class event because of a mistake, they felt sad. Apart from the competition, they also felt sad for her tears. Poplar Fruit was the only model who had stood up to help her. Although he could not save her from today's loss, he had stood up for her at her most desperate moment. At that moment, many people had the same thought. I really envy him. If only I could have such a kind person to help me when I was down on my luck. What a happy thing it would be. Returning to Givenchy's show, the 20-minute-long series of dresses, maxi dresses, and miniskirts almost made the audience forget about Yang Guo's previous performance. She couldn't help it. Ardell's designs included women's clothes and skirts. However, those were all for female models. Yang Guo would never cross-dress as a woman. So the question was, were there no male models in the dress series? There were. You should never underestimate the fantastic ideas of the world's top designers, including Ricardo. In this year's Bali Fashion Week, Ricardo had put a male model in a dress. Moreover, the dress style did not mean that the whole show was feminine. In Ricardo's design, the neatly cut knee-length skirt was somewhat like the attire of ancient warriors. It was paired with a work jacket, a baseball jacket, a round-shaped pullover, and even a pair of flat plastic sandals. It still gave people a sense of toughness and masculinity. Perhaps most people thought that Poplar Fruit's performance was over. After all, he had appeared 5 times. In the history of the Fashion Week, the most models had appeared on the main stage of the Fashion Week. No one believed that Ardell would dare to let Poplar Fruit perform more than 10 outfits on the main stage. Only Kiki, as always, was looking forward to her father's appearance. Cruz, quick look. My papa is coming out again. Perhaps because he felt that his father Beckham didn't pay much attention to him, the 7-year-old Cruz switched seats with Luo Danny. He stuck his head together and played with Chi-Chi and Xiao-Chi shamelessly. Then Chi-Chi, who was less than 2 years old, forced him to look at the runway in the middle of the hall. Wow! Many of the female audience members screamed softly. If it weren't for their status, they would probably have turned into hungry wolves and howled at the sky. Looking at Poplar Fruit on the stage, you would know why they were so excited. Poplar Fruit's outfit was not the main attraction of Ardell's collection. It was not even the second or third main attraction. However, it had an advantage that even the main attraction could not compete with. That was, it could vividly show off Poplar Fruit's strong body. Yes, Poplar Fruit appeared on the stage again in the wolf head underwear that Giselle had wanted him to win Ricardo's approval. His upper body was bare, and his muscles were almost perfect. His 8-pack made one's blood boil, and his Apollo's belt made one think of him as a graceful figure. As soon as Poplar Fruit walked on the stage, the audience went crazy. Not only did the women go crazy, but even the men, especially the little boy Cruz, said enviously, "Kiki, your father's body is so good." Brooklyn was 13 years old this year. He had received football training from a young age under the leadership of his father. Recently, he had received an invitation to Chelsea's youth training. It was said that he would go for a trial next year. He also said enviously, "Yes, it's better than my father's. Dad, I think your title as a heartthrob is going to change hands." Beckham knocked on the head of his eldest son, who always coveted his popularity, and said in a bad mood, "Don't worry, after this is over, I'll ask Chi-Chi's father for advice on the secret of fitness. Your father will also have an 8-pack." When he was at his peak, Beckham's body was also very good. However, now that he was about to retire, and he was already an uncle, his abdominal muscles were less than 6. If he did not deliberately shrink his stomach, it was estimated that only 4 could be seen. "My papa knows kung fu," Kiki said proudly as she straightened her chest and clenched her small fist. Luo Danny also confirmed, "Well, Uncle Leon's Chinese kung fu is so powerful." Not to mention the reaction of Beckham's family, Poplar Fruit's appearance on the stage gave people too many surprises. One had to know that this time, he had once again overturned everyone's understanding of him. He had shown his fierce side. The fierce here was of course a compliment. Looking at his muscles, the strong pheromones from afar were intoxicating. In the beginning, Poplar Fruit's muscles felt like they were stealing the limelight, even covering the limelight of his clothes. However, as Poplar Fruit moved forward, his momentum gradually increased, and the wolf head on his clothes also opened and closed its big mouth with fangs. People began to gradually shift their attention from his body to his clothes. Is he still human? Is he a werewolf? Princess Charlotte covered her mouth below the stage. Her eyes were a little frightened and blurred, and she couldn't help but mutter. She said what everyone was thinking. When they looked at Poplar Fruit's clothes, it was as if they saw two giant wolves slowly walking side by side. When they reached the end of the runway, that kind of wildness was almost suffocating. When he reached the end, Poplar Fruit paused for half a second, a model standing slightly sideways, and then gently raised the corner of his mouth. In an instant, it was as if the snow and ice had melted, as if the night had disappeared, as if the clouds had parted and the sun had risen. The fierce giant wolf once again turned back into a charming masculine handsome man. Poplar Fruit's toothless smile almost charmed all the women present. And he didn't give them time to think at all. He turned around and walked back. Like a generation of Wolf King in his twilight years, Poplar Fruit only left them with tough back muscles and a straight back, and his momentum gradually died down. Chapter 760. Poplar Fruit's performance had fascinated the audience. After he left, the audience was still in a daze for a long time. Only a few professional designers applauded Ardell and Poplar Fruit from the bottom of their hearts. By the time they came back to their senses, there were already other models on the runway. It was too late to applaud. Sensationalist. The reporter from The Sun scolded when he saw the silent audience. Then he was overjoyed. He thought that although Poplar Fruit had been very impressive, the lack of applause meant that Poplar Fruit had failed. Now he found a point to complain about. He rubbed the photo in his camera and laughed in his heart. Let's see how you'll die tomorrow. Of course, the son would be criticized and ridiculed for being the only one in the city who had openly criticized poplar fruit. But that would be a story for another day. He was the only one who thought that way. The other reporters couldn't wait to think about how to describe the shock brought by poplar fruit. There was no doubt that it was a success. Almost all of the buyers in the venue drew heavily on their notebooks, suppressing the excitement in their hearts. Regardless of whether it was the East or the West, all of the buyers saw a business opportunity in this. Oh my God, as long as the photos and videos of today's show are circulated, fitness enthusiasts all over the world will definitely go crazy for this pair of pants. In fact, everyone, including Ardal, had underestimated the impact of poplar fruit's show. They didn't know that in the future, the pants and its pirated versions would be sold out for more than a month. Its sales would even exceed all the clothes of all the brands in this year's Bali Fashion Week. What was even more unexpected was that in the more open Western world, many young people who had strong confidence in their figures were topless. They wore wolf head underwear on the streets and mixed in various sports grounds. Inadvertently, this kind of dressing became a different kind of fashion. The fire started by poplar fruit burned until mid-November, when it gradually stopped because of the cold weather. Ardal didn't even think about this. Now he was relieved to see poplar fruit's performance backstage. When poplar fruit came down, he walked up to poplar fruit and patted him on the shoulder, praising him. Good job, good job. Although he didn't hear any applause, Ardal still felt the atmosphere ignited by poplar fruit, which was enough. That was the reason why he was relieved. After all, Ardal was the one who was under the most pressure. First of all, he had ignored other people's objections and boldly used poplar fruit, who had no experience at all, which had caused a lot of objections from the media before. If he used poplar fruit, he might succeed because of poplar fruit and fail because of poplar fruit. If poplar fruit failed, he could hide from China, but he couldn't hide anywhere. And he definitely had to take all the responsibility and blame. Moreover, even if Ardal managed to get through the main stage safely, he would still be criticized by the media if his performance was not outstanding enough. Because he had arranged for poplar fruit to perform more than 10 times today, people would ask him why he had arranged for the same model to perform more than once. Was there no one else in Givenchy? Since other models could perform as well as poplar fruit, why not give others a chance? Was there a conspiracy? Therefore, only when poplar fruit reached the level that he said, Leon is the most suitable man in the world to wear the clothes I designed. Only then would people give up. Today poplar fruit had given him a big surprise. Needless to say, poplar fruit had performed very well in the first 5 outfits. Just now, in the wolf head underwear, poplar fruit had burst out with energy that he had never seen before. If it weren't for the fact that there was still a show to do, Ardal would have rushed to the rooftop, straightened his old chest, pointed at the pedestrians below and shouted, "Who else?" Yes, who dared to say that other models could perform as well as poplar fruit? Ardal would never believe it. Because poplar fruit's performance was absolutely unprecedented and unparalleled. Ardal only said one sentence to poplar fruit, then immediately let go of poplar fruit. Poplar fruit had to hurry to change and touch up his makeup. 3 minutes later, he still had to go on stage. Below the runway, Pai Dinwan was also shocked by poplar fruit's performance. He subconsciously glanced at Duan Xueqing, and found that Duan Xueqing just glanced at him, and then turned her head away. Pai Dinwan took a deep breath. He didn't feel secretly happy, but a little depressed. He understood this feeling. He loved someone but couldn't be with her. When they met again, he couldn't look at her directly. It wasn't that he didn't love her anymore, but that he couldn't let her go. Gently touching his chest, Pai Dinwan wondered if he was stupid or crazy. He fell in love with someone he shouldn't have and changed his free and easy style. Now his heart was bleeding again and again. Only the atmosphere here was depressing. The whole hall was full of joy and harmony. Princess Charlotte was also happily chatting with her friends. Of course, the topic was poplar fruit, who had just performed well. "Charlotte, you have good taste," her friend joked. "Of course. What's wrong with the person I like?" Princess Charlotte laughed without pretense. "When are you going to announce your relationship?" Her friend continued to tease her. Announce what relationship? Only then did Princess Charlotte come to her senses. She patted him with a smile and said, "Don't talk nonsense. Don't let others hear it and make it into a scandal. I have nothing to do with him. Besides, didn't you see the video of him being interviewed?" Princess Charlotte said. "He has a child and a girlfriend." "So what?" Her friend calmly said. "If you like him, then do it. He's not married anyway. Do you think I'm you? The daughter of a rich man?" Princess Charlotte laughed. She was referring to the restrictions brought about by her identity as a princess. "Forget it. I'm not interested in him. You know my type. He doesn't fit at all. Anyway, I think he's pretty manly," her friend said casually. "With such a good figure, he must be good in bed. Hey, you perverted woman. What's in your head?" Princess Charlotte laughed and patted her friend. "Hey, stop talking. He's coming out again. Don't disturb me from looking at handsome guys." Her friend pushed Princess Charlotte away and looked at the runway excitedly. Chapter 761. Poplar Fruit appeared on the stage again under the expectant eyes of the audience. This time, when he walked on the stage, he heard a lot of sighs. Then the audience laughed softly. The sighs were because they saw Poplar Fruit put on his shirt, and the laughter was just kind laughter. They also felt that their sighs were a bit ridiculous. Would they only be happy when Poplar Fruit took off all his clothes? At this time, they realized the purpose of coming here. They were here to enjoy the fashion show, not to watch a striptease. Poplar Fruit was a little confused by the audience's reaction. Because the spotlights were shining face to face, Poplar Fruit couldn't see the audience's expressions clearly. He could only distinguish whether they were praising him or blaming him by their voices. But this time he really didn't understand. If they were praising him, then what was the meaning of the sighs? If they were blaming him, Poplar Fruit didn't feel the sarcasm in their laughter. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit was a freak who could do two things at once. While he was thinking, he was able to walk on the runway according to his own ideas without being affected. Of course, when he turned around confidently, the thunderous applause behind him made him feel a little better. And this time, the applause didn't stop until Poplar Fruit stepped off the stage. What he didn't know was that the audience was actually making up for the applause they owed him last time as well as this time. It wasn't easy. After all, the audience wasn't ordinary people who liked to make a fuss. They were either well-known designers or buyers in the fashion industry, or famous celebrities and stars in society. Good. Ardell excitedly greeted Poplar Fruit again. From his point of view, Poplar Fruit's performance was getting better and better, even better than before. And his fit with the clothes was almost 100%. In just a few minutes, Poplar Fruit had changed his temperament and performed so perfectly. Even Ardell sincerely admired him. Is it really okay? Didn't many people sigh in disappointment? Poplar Fruit asked worriedly. He had confidence in himself, but he couldn't grasp the audience's pulse. Haha, if you take off your clothes, I can guarantee that they won't sigh. Ardell patted Poplar Fruit on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Don't think too much. You did a good job. Didn't you see the audience applauding you?" Listen, it only stopped now. Poplar Fruit shrugged and smiled. "Okay, I understand. I'm going to change." He still had about 10 more performances to go on stage. Although it was not as good as Young 32nd Young Master, it was enough to make him suffer. Ardell, who has been dormant for decades, has shocked the world with a single brilliant feat this time. In the hall, many fashion critics began to shift their attention from Poplar Fruit to the series of splashing style clothes. With their keen eyes, they soon realized that Ardell was going to lead a new generation of fashion trends. In other words, they had already decided that this show was the moment when they witnessed the rise of a legendary designer. Fashion had no boundaries. Just like old Master Karl before, the seemingly simple, but actually complicated combination was a trend. Ardell was the same. His minimalistic and even stingy use of color, as well as his oriental style, would also become fashion. There were no tricks to fashion. Even some children's casual cutting would overwhelm the designer's painstaking meditation and become fashion. Of course, this situation was very rare. However, The threshold of fashion was really high. Talent and opportunity were indispensable. Ardal's design was his talent, and Poplar Fruit's appearance was his opportunity. If Poplar Fruit hadn't helped him show this series of clothes as a model, his clothes would probably have become fashion. However, they would never have reached the height that everyone expected, and he would never have become a legend. However, opportunity was also a kind of strength. If it hadn't been for Ardal's ability to recognize people, Poplar Fruit wouldn't have stood on this stage, and his clothes wouldn't have shone so brightly. Therefore, Ardal's success was ultimately due to himself. Givenchy has now set up 2 flags. Ricardo didn't feel unhappy. Sitting in the VIP area, he gently clapped and thought happily in his heart. Givenchy was not as good as Chanel and LV in the ranking of brands in France, which could be seen from the arrangement of today's main stage. However, at the international level, there were many brands ahead of Givenchy. With Ardal and him, Givenchy would definitely reach a higher level. Because Poplar Fruit had given the audience too many surprises in the Wolf Head Panties show, Poplar Fruit's brilliant performance this time only made them feel surprised again, but not as surprised as the last time. Fortunately, this difference didn't make them feel disappointed in Poplar Fruit. At this time, except for the reporter from The Sun who inexplicably argued with Poplar Fruit, almost everyone in the audience recognized Poplar Fruit's strength as a model. As for the celebrities, besides paying attention to the clothes, they paid more attention to Poplar Fruit as a person. What they were interested in talking about was Poplar Fruit's constantly changing temperament and style. It could be said that almost every time Poplar Fruit appeared on stage, he changed everyone's perception of him. From the first mixed-blood prince to the calm and handsome professor, and then to the wild werewolf who made women's hearts pound, Poplar Fruit's lively eyes and constantly changing temperament could achieve a near-perfect fit with different types of clothes, even if he was expressionless from beginning to end. A magician with hundreds of changes, a celebrity exclaimed. Hundreds of changes? It seemed that this word was really suitable for Poplar Fruit. Just like an excellent actor, he looked exactly like what he was acting. Poplar Fruit looked good in whatever clothes he wore. When someone heard this comment, it immediately spread. Later, a newspaper reporter heard it and used the words, magician with hundreds of changes in the headlines the next day. It was also crazily reposted on the internet. Thus, Poplar Fruit's short modeling career became a legend. But this was all in the future. Right now, the audience was staring intently at the main stage of Givenchy. They eagerly expressed their expectations, hoping that Poplar Fruit, the ever-changing model, would give them a different feeling. In fact, Poplar Fruit satisfied all their expectations. Until the finale, Poplar Fruit appeared almost continuously. In the end, he appeared in Ardal's main clothes. The passionate scholar who seemed to have traveled from ancient times once again charmed the audience. Until the end, the applause didn't stop. There was even the first thank you gift from a model in the history of Fashion Week. Although it was with Ardal, it was still a glorious moment for Poplar Fruit. Chapter 762. Leon, what are you doing? Ardal asked Poplar Fruit, who was about to turn around and walk backstage. Poplar Fruit asked him curiously, I'm changing my clothes. What's wrong? Poplar Fruit was neither happy nor sad. He was just a little emotional about the applause he had just received. He didn't think he was that great. On the contrary, because he didn't have time to take care of his daughter, Poplar Fruit couldn't wait to meet up with Kiki. Why are you in such a hurry to change your clothes? Didn't you see that so many people want to take photos with you? Ardal gently raised his chin, indicating Poplar Fruit to look at the celebrities who were gradually coming down from the audience. Although he didn't like it, Poplar Fruit could only risk his life to accompany the gentleman. He and Ardal first took photos with several senior executives of Givenchy, including Ricardo. Then, somewhat numbly, he let Ardal lead him to take photos with all kinds of people he didn't know. I heard that you are Chinese? Suddenly, Poplar Fruit heard familiar Mandarin in the crowd. Although he had never heard this woman's voice in his memory, it still didn't change his slightly excited mood. Poplar Fruit hadn't talked to a third Chinese person face-to-face for more than half a month, except for Kiki and Fong Min. He turned around and saw that he knew this person. She was the former spokesperson of Chanel in China, a Chinese actress that Poplar Fruit liked very much, Zhou Gongzi. Hello, Mr. Zhou. No, Miss Zhou-sun. Hello. Poplar Fruit was a little excited as he bowed and stretched out his hands to her. You're right. Haha, you can just call me Mr. Zhou. I like it. Zhou-sun raised her hand to cover her mouth, but laughed heartily. Your performance today was really great. Zhou-sun shook hands with Poplar Fruit. She smiled as if they were close friends. If it weren't for someone who introduced me, I wouldn't have known that you are Chinese. However, I've never heard of you before. You don't mind me saying this, do you? No, I wasn't in the circle before. Poplar Fruit laughed. It's normal that you haven't heard of me. It doesn't matter. I believe that after today, you will definitely become a celebrity, renowned both at home and abroad. Zhou-sun waved his fist to encourage him. She only exchanged a few words with Yang Gua, and then the two of them took a photo together before parting ways. After all, apart from Givenchy, Poplar Fruit was still the hot steamed bun of everyone present. After a while, the number of people who came to take photos with Poplar Fruit gradually decreased, and people who were familiar with Poplar Fruit gradually came up. Should I call you Poplar Fruit? Or should I call you Leon? An elegant voice came along with the sound of slow footsteps. Just call me Leon. The name Poplar Fruit is a bit of a mouthful for you. Poplar Fruit remembered this voice, although it was screaming or trembling before. He turned around and smiled. Your Royal Highness, I'm really sorry for the conflict with your bodyguard. You've already apologized. Princess Charlotte, wearing her beautiful green off-the-shoulder dress, walked up to Poplar Fruit, showed an elegant smile and said, Actually, the person who should be apologizing is me, isn't it? Poplar Fruit shrugged and said, I read the report and know that it's not your fault. Moreover, this matter is in the past, so there's no need to mention it again. I have a question. Princess Charlotte changed the topic and said, You said that you didn't know my identity at that time. Is that true? Poplar Fruit nodded and said honestly, Yes, although I've seen your name before, I didn't know that you were Monaco's Princess Charlotte. You've seen my name? Where did you see it? Princess Charlotte was really curious about this. Monaco's introduction. Poplar Fruit chuckled and said, When I was learning French, I read a lot of books and newspapers. There was a book about the constitutional monarchy in Europe that introduced you. Papa. His chat with Princess Charlotte was suddenly interrupted by Kiki's cry from afar. It was unknown how the little fellow broke free from Sister Luo Danny's embrace. Like a little red horse out of control, she swept through the crowd like a wisp of smoke and accurately ran in the direction of her father. When Poplar Fruit heard his daughter's voice, he immediately turned around and left the princess behind. He took a few steps forward and hugged Kiki, who was rushing over. He intimately patted Kiki's little butt and said with a smile, Why are you running so fast? What if you fall? Papa won't run away. Papa, you don't even come to see Kiki, you're so bad. Kiki pouted her small mouth and discontentedly ravaged her father's collar with her small hands. Her small nose twitched, and then exaggeratedly covered her nose with her two small hands. Papa stinks again. Kiki didn't like the smell of cosmetics. Every time, she would say that this kind of rich fragrance was stinky. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, Isn't it because I haven't had time to remove my makeup yet? Kiki, bear with it. Papa won't stink after removing his makeup. He also didn't like others to put powder on his face, but he needed to go on stage, so there was no other way. Kiki had just run over, and had already attracted a lot of attention. Many celebrities couldn't help but smile when they saw the affection between the father and daughter. The reporters also quickly grabbed the camera in their hands and fiercely pressed the shutter. This is your daughter? Last time we met, it seems? Princess Charlotte was left to the side. She shook her head in amusement. This was the first time in her life. She didn't get angry and walked up to ask. Yes. Sorry, I forgot to introduce you. Poplar Fruit only remembered Princess Charlotte at this time. He touched his nose in embarrassment. Papa, what is a princess? Kiki asked in not very fluent French. A princess is a very beautiful girl. Princess Charlotte answered first. Then I am Princess Kiki. Kiki had always been confident in her own beauty. She stuck out her chest in her father's arms and giggled. Poplar Fruit shook his head speechlessly. He whispered to Kiki what a princess meant in Chinese. So Kiki is not a princess yet. But Kiki wants to be a princess. Kiki tilted her head and blinked her big eyes. Well, if you want to be a princess, then be a princess. Poplar Fruit couldn't persuade his cute daughter, so he could only follow her wishes. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Princess Charlotte objected. Princess Kiki can speak French. Why don't you speak French? Papa said Kiki is not a princess. Kiki complained. Princess Charlotte, don't you think Kiki is also very beautiful? Of course. Princess Charlotte said with a smile. Princess Kiki is very beautiful. Don't worry, if I say you are a princess, then you are a princess. Chapter 763. Miss, shall we go and have a chat with that model? The buyer of the Duan family walked over excitedly and said to Duan Xueqing, I heard that he is Chinese. Let's see if we can get a better channel through him. I'm not going. Duan Xueqing glanced at Poplar Fruit, who was talking to Princess Charlotte, and lowered her eyelids. Ah, why? You know, the clothes he is wearing today are so good that they are exploding. We have to be one step ahead and get the best price, then bring it back to China. It will definitely sell well. The buyer was focused on his work, and did not give up trying to persuade her. You go, I'm not going. Duan Xueqing did not even raise her head. She was tidying up her carry-on bag, not knowing what was there to tidy up. The shopkeeper awkwardly scratched his head. He knew his family's young lady's temper. It seemed hopeless. He still wanted to use his young lady's beauty to strike up a conversation. If an old man like him went up, who would pay attention to him? It's okay to go and have a look, Pai Dinwan suddenly said. He put down the camera in his hand and said with a smile. Duan Xueqing frowned and turned to look at him. She did not say anything. Her beautiful eyes looked at Pai Dinwan, as if to say, I want an explanation. Go, I'll go too, Pai Dinwan said with a firm tone. Don't worry. His eyes also looked at Duan Xueqing. He was frank and had no intention of avoiding her gaze. Duan Xueqing looked at him and frowned. Then she turned her head and looked at Poplar Fruit, who still had a lot of people. She bit her lower lip and seemed to hesitate for a moment before saying, There are not many people waiting. The buyer was overjoyed and said repeatedly, Good, good, good. He also looked at Pai Dinwan gratefully, thanking him for persuading his miss. Pai Dinwan did not look at him, nor did he look at Duan Xueqing, who lowered her head. Instead, he looked blankly at the empty space next to him. You have mixed feelings, don't you? Isn't it a little too cruel to her? But this is a mission. And it's this man. I'm sorry, there won't be a next time, I promise. Pai Dinwan sighed in his heart. Back to the center of the hall. Poplar Fruit had finished talking with Princess Charlotte. He carried his daughter. He did not know where he was going. Ardier led a few people. His granddaughter, Luo Danny, was among them. Cool uncle. Kiki was the first to notice them. She patted her father happily and pointed to them. Hearing this, Poplar Fruit also turned his head curiously. He had heard this name from Kiki, but he did not know who gave it to him. As soon as he turned his head, he was stunned. What cool uncle? Isn't this Beckham? Poplar Fruit was not a fan of Beckham. When he played football in college, he liked Messi because Messi was not tall and played so well. However, Poplar Fruit definitely knew Beckham. What a joke. If the Chinese knew football but did not know Beckham, then they could really be dissected by aliens. Leon. Ardier laughed and walked over with Luo Danny. He said in English, Let me introduce you. This is Beckham. Who doesn't know him? Poplar Fruit interrupted him and greeted him with a smile. David, hello, I'm your fan. Naturally, he had to be polite in front of others. Beckham showed his charming smile, and patted the three boys beside him with his right hand that was not holding Xiao-Qi. He said, Haha, this is my pleasure. However, I have to tell you that my sons have become your fans today. Yes, sir. Can I ask you how to build such attractive muscles? Brooklyn was not afraid of strangers at all. He asked with his eyes shining. Children, don't interrupt. Victoria pulled Brooklyn and said, Leon, hello. I'm Victoria. Your show today was very, very exciting. She used 2 adjectives to express her love. Thank you, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. He turned his head and winked at Brooklyn. He said, let's talk privately later. Kiki, who had been holding back for a long time, finally interrupted. She said happily in English. Let me introduce you to Papa. This is Brooklyn, this is Romeo, this is Cruz, and this is Harper. Poplar Fruit's eyes lingered on Romeo for a moment. There was a smile in his eyes, and he thought, oh, this is the little boy who is pursuing Luo Danny. Kiki likes Harper very much, Kiki whispered in her father's ear. However, the little girl didn't control her volume. Everyone heard her whisper, and because Kiki couldn't translate her English for a while, everyone understood. Suddenly, it made everyone laugh. Your daughter is so smart, Beckham praised. In fact, they didn't know Kiki's real age, and Poplar Fruit didn't tell them. If they knew that Kiki was only a few months older than Xiaoqi, they would be shocked. Thank you. Harper is also very cute. Poplar Fruit laughed. There are a lot of her fans in China. They affectionately call her Xiaoqi on the internet. At this time, Poplar Fruit also remembered Xiaoqi's middle name. When he heard Kiki and Fong Beibei on the phone, he didn't think of it. Is that so? Victoria laughed. Then the next time David goes to China, bring Harper to meet her fans. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, that will definitely cause a sensation. By the way, if you go to China, well, of course, if you have time, be sure to visit us in Yangqing. Yangqing is a big city near the port of China. Moreover, Kiki will miss her good friend very much when she goes back. Kiki nodded and pouted. Kiki will miss Harper. Luo Danny, you should also come to Yangqing to see Kiki, Cruz, Romeo, and Brooklyn. Kiki. Xiaoqi called Kiki's English name in a childish voice, which made everyone feel cute again. Beckham asked curiously, Leon, are you going back? Why not stay in Bali? Anyone could see that Poplar Fruit would definitely become a top model in the world after today's wonderful performance. Givenchy would probably give him a big contract to keep him. Poplar Fruit glanced at Artel, who smiled and said, don't worry about David. We are all friends. Leon is not a professional model. He has his own career and studies in China. This time, he came to help at my invitation. It was also because of Artel's invitation that I had such a good opportunity to experience it. Poplar Fruit smiled politely and said, my profession is a translator. After Fashion Week, I will go back to China. That's a pity, Victoria said regretfully. You have a bright future as a model. Chapter 764. The Beckham family came in a grandiose manner and left in a grandiose manner. On the other hand, Chi-Chi reluctantly watched as little Seven was carried away by her father. Papa, Harper's little face is chubby. Kiki whispered in her father's ear again. She unintentionally revealed the reason why she liked Xiaoqi. It's so fun to pinch. It's like gold, but gold is so fluffy that it won't be cute when it grows up. Poplar Fruit laughed and reached out to pinch Kiki's little face. Oh, I'm talking about Harper. Chi-Chi rubbed her wrinkled little cheeks and pouted in protest. She still didn't know that she was also the meaty type. Especially now, when she pouted her cheeks, people really wanted to pinch her. And Kiki's little belly was so round. When she was eating, Poplar Fruit often touched Kiki's little belly and jokingly threatened her that if she ate so much, she would become a little fat girl in the future. You're a little fat girl. You're always talking about Kiki. Why don't I see you eating less? However, Kiki still did what she wanted, relying on Fong Beibei's support. Leon, hurry up and tidy up, Artel said with a smile. Artel said with a smile. His mood had been fluctuating, and it seemed that he would not stop for the rest of the day. Tonight, we still have a banquet to attend. Poplar Fruit frowned and said, Artel, do I have to attend? He didn't like this kind of occasion very much. It was not that Poplar Fruit hated crowded places, but he felt that he wouldn't be able to chat with people he didn't know. Of course. You can't refuse. This is our celebration party. You and I, the two great contributors, have to attend. Artel and Poplar Fruit had been friends for so long that he knew where Poplar Fruit's weakness was. He smiled and said, and don't use Kiki as an excuse. Kiki, come with us. Where is Kiki going? Kiki blinked her big eyes and asked curiously. To eat delicious food. Ardal was like a weird grandfather waving a lollipop. He laughed and said, there are so many delicious things there, such as cakes, snacks, and lobsters. Kiki, ask your father to take you there. This time, it just so happened to hit Chi-Chi's itch. Her eyes seemed to bloom with brilliance all of a sudden. She grabbed her father's clothes and shook it vigorously. She was very happy, but she pretended to be pitiful and begged. Papa, take Chi-Chi to eat delicious food, okay? Yonggwa rolled her eyes at Ardal and said helplessly, okay, let's go. Dad will take you there. I'm really defeated by you. In the end, Ardal asked Poplar Fruit to go back and change into new clothes, and then left in a hurry with Luo Danny. He was the main character of today's show. In addition to dealing with the celebrities, he also had to attend the media meeting with Ricardo, and answer the media's questions, and so on. Taking advantage of the intermission, most of the audience in the hall temporarily left to eat or do other things. Anyway, there were not many people left in the hall. Poplar Fruit changed his clothes backstage and came out. He asked his makeup artist and hairstylist to leave together. They took the underground parking passage, and the car was ready. However, just as they walked to the elevator, a group of people blocked their way. Victor and Matisse thought they were reporters or uninvited guests. They nervously stood in front of Poplar Fruit and said, Leon, run! We'll stop them. Poplar Fruit looked at them and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. These two guys actually wanted to protect him? It could be said that among the Westerners Poplar Fruit had met, Victor and Matisse were the two people with the worst physical fitness, except for the nerdy programmers of Alan's company. They didn't like to exercise. Matisse was as thin as a bamboo pole, and Victor looked a little fiercer with his big beard, but in fact he was also a weakling. Okay. Poplar Fruit patted Matisse and Victor's shoulders and said, don't be nervous. They're my friends. Kiki also looked for a long time. As if she had discovered a new world, she shouted, Papa, it's Auntie Duan. Yes, when Poplar Fruit looked at her, he was a little confused. He thought he had recognized the wrong person. But when he looked at her again, she was wearing a white dress, her waist-length hair, her beautiful face without any makeup, and that cold temperament. If she wasn't Duan Xueqing, who else could she be? Hey, Xueqing, why did you come to France? Poplar Fruit happily stood in front of Victor and Matisse and asked, don't tell me you're here to support me? Victor and Matisse looked at each other. They shrugged at each other and walked to the side to talk about their own matters. Anyway, Poplar Fruit and Matisse were speaking Chinese, so they couldn't understand. It's a coincidence. Duan Xueqing said concisely. Miss, you know each other? The Duan family's master looked at her in surprise and asked with some doubt and joy. Haha, she and I are old classmates. In university, Xueqing was 1 year younger than me. May I ask who you are? Poplar Fruit asked politely. That master wasn't young. Although he was in high spirits, Poplar Fruit guessed that he was around the same age as his father. Oh, I'm the Duan family's buyer. My name is Tao Buocheng. The master knew his Mrs. character. If he waited for her to introduce herself, it would probably take a long time. Hello, Master Tao. Poplar Fruit put down Kiki and let her stand by his side. He took the initiative to shake hands with the master, which made the master feel flattered. Buyer? Are you referring to fashion buyers? Poplar Fruit recently had a good understanding of the fashion industry. Although he couldn't be considered a true industry insider in terms of grasp and interest in fashion, his knowledge wasn't bad. He asked in puzzlement, according to what I know, the domestic fashion industry isn't very developed. Tao Buocheng proudly puffed out his chest and said, our Duan family is one of the first companies in the country to come into contact with the fashion industry. Currently, we have formed a group of 15 buyers. This is relatively rare in the country. Poplar Fruit nodded. He was just asking. In fact, he wasn't very interested. However, this time, he had a little understanding of Duan Xueqing's family situation. He turned his head to look at the man on his left wearing a cap. He took the initiative to ask, how should I address this cameraman? Pai Dinwan. Finally, someone responded. Pai Dinwan felt like crying. If Duan Xueqing didn't introduce him, he couldn't talk. Turning his head to look at Duan Xiueqing, Pai Dinwan suddenly reached out his hand to Poplar Fruit and said firmly, "Little Qing's boyfriend." Chapter 765. Pai Dinwan Xiaoqing's boyfriend. Pai Dinwan's words shocked everyone. Tao Buqing's master widened his eyes, but he didn't say anything. Before he came, the company had told him not to interfere with Pai Dinwan's matters. Pai Dinwan could do whatever he wanted. But today, it seemed that the relationship between Pai Dinwan and his mistress was a little interesting. Duan Xiueqing also looked at Pai Dinwan in surprise, which made her expressionless face have a hint of expression. That was really not an easy thing to do. However, Duan Xiueqing was unexpectedly silent. She looked at Poplar Fruit and didn't refute. Poplar Fruit was also a little shaken. Inexplicably, there was a surge of sourness in his heart. This feeling was a little strange. In fact, men always had a little possessive desire. Including Poplar Fruit, in their subconscious, they wanted all the beauty in the world to belong to themselves and not allow others to touch it. In fact, the emperors in ancient times did just that. And those rich people also had many wives and concubines, didn't they? It was just that in modern times, because of the system, because of the law, and even because of their own strength, most people suppressed their own desires. Poplar Fruit was the kind of man who had strong self-restraint. Moreover, in his thoughts, marrying a wife and having a child was already the greatest satisfaction in life. Why should he mess up everyone's happiness because of his own greed? Duan Xiueqing was the same. Such a beautiful girl. It was impossible for Poplar Fruit not to like, but he thought that this kind of like only stopped at the level of like. In the past, there was Lu Yunran, and his heart didn't leave any space for Duan Xiueqing. Later there was Kiki. Taking care of Kiki was so tiring that he didn't have the time to think about his own personal feelings. Kiki grew up a little, and he had time and space. Feng Beibei and Kiki had already occupied his heart long ago. Indeed, it was unfair to Duan Xiueqing. Cuteness had never been fair. Now Poplar Fruit felt jealous. It was like an antique that had been by your side suddenly told you that it had an owner. You had the chance to get it in the past. Not to mention Duan Xiueqing, even if Song Jiwen, who had been close friends with Poplar Fruit for so many years, if he suddenly announced that he was getting married and being kidnapped by a woman, Poplar Fruit would also feel reluctant to let him go. Although saying this would make it seem like they were gay, it was true. Of course, although Poplar Fruit felt jealous now, he didn't think that he made the wrong choice. He pondered for a moment and laughed in his heart. He felt that he was a little too overbearing. You were the one who said that Xiueqing would definitely find a guy who liked her. Now that she found him, you can't bear to let him go? Aha! Pai Dinwan, you're really good. You've taken down our ice beauty. Poplar Fruit walked up confidently and patted Pai Dinwan's shoulder. With his height, Pai Dinwan was still shorter than him by a head. How should I address you? Poplar Fruit asked. I was born in 1988. Should I call you Xiao Bai or Brother Bai? Are we close? Pai Dinwan secretly looked at Poplar Fruit's hand on his left shoulder and muttered in his heart. He squeezed out a smile and said, Poplar Fruit, looks like you have to call me Brother Bai. I was born in 1988. Wow, you're older than Xiueqing by 9 years? Poplar Fruit said in surprise. But that's good too. Older people know how to take care of people. Xiueqing, this girl, has a princess temper. I reckon that Brother Bai's personality is not bad and can protect her. Towards the end, Poplar Fruit laughed, but Duan Xiueqing glared at him. What are you looking at me for? Poplar Fruit laughed. Isn't that the case? She's cold, doesn't like to talk to people, and spends money like a spendthrift. Kiki hugged her father's calf and stuck her head out. She giggled and said, Kiki can testify that Auntie Duan doesn't like to talk. She had been secretly looking at that Uncle Bai and felt that it was a little strange. How did he know Dad's name? Kiki thought for a while. It should be Auntie Duan who told him, right? And Kiki is so smart. Sorry. Poplar Fruit smiled and said to Pai Dinwan, I have a good relationship with Xiueqing. When we were in school, I was 1 year higher than her, and was her direct senior. Then she was a little boring, so I was the only male classmate she knew. Is she all right? Pai Dinwan walked up and gently held Duan Xueqing's hand with a smile. He said to Poplar Fruit, I feel that Xiaoqing is quite easy to get along with. How did you two meet? Poplar Fruit asked curiously. She often goes to the tea house to read, and I like to drink tea. There was one time when we met and sat together. After that, we often drank tea together and slowly got to know each other. Pai Dinwan scratched his head and said embarrassedly, My personality is actually quite boring. Fortunately, Xiaoqing doesn't mind. Pai Dinwan turned his head and looked at Duan Xueqing. Duan Xueqing also looked at him in a daze. It was unknown what emotions were flowing in their eyes. I suddenly feel that the two of you are really compatible, Poplar Fruit said emotionally. Brother Bai, I'm serious. You must take good care of Xueqing. She's a good girl. These were Poplar Fruit's heartfelt words. Actually, there was something he didn't say out loud. If you dare to let her down, I will definitely beat you to death. I swear. These words were already at the tip of his tongue, but he still swallowed them back. He felt that if he were to say it out loud, he would be like a long-winded father who couldn't bear to let his daughter get married. This role was a little messy. Miss our matter. Tao Buoqing stood at the side gloomily. He had a feeling of being ignored just like Pai Dinwan. These youngsters were talking about relationship problems and forgot about business. Tao Buoqing's soft reminder made Poplar Fruit come back to his senses. He smiled and asked, Master Tao, you came to find me. Is there something you need my help with? It's okay, just say it. If I can help, I will definitely help. Tao Buoqing was overjoyed. He quickly said his original intention. Oh, this. Poplar Fruit thought for a moment and said, I don't have any good channels, but I can help you ask Ardal. He's a member of the Givenchy family. Oh right. Poplar Fruit ran over and whispered to Martis and the others. Then he came back with 3 cards and said with a smile, There's a banquet at the Givenchy Hall tonight. I have an invitation. Do you want to attend? I can introduce you to Ardal at the banquet. He was the one who had snatched the invitation. Martis and the other 2 had his own. After all, they were all members of the Givenchy family, so they could ask for another invitation. They could even show their faces and enter directly. Chapter 766. Miss, why don't you go? Tao Buoqing couldn't help but ask as they walked out of the Louvre. It's so rare for us to be able to attend an internal cocktail party of a major international brand. You know, if Mr. Duan came, he would definitely attend. Duan Xueqing just shook her head. She was as determined as she was when she rejected Poplar Fruit's invitation in front of the elevator in the lobby. Because of Duan Xueqing's refusal, Poplar Fruit only sent out 2 invitations in the end. Pai Dinwan also said, Xiaoqing, if you don't go, I won't go either. However, Duan Xueqing didn't agree. She looked into Pai Dinwan's eyes and said, No, you don't have to do it because of me. That's the place you're looking forward to. She said that it was the place Pai Dinwan was looking forward to, because Pai Dinwan had told her that he wanted to see a big scene, like Fashion Week, or a place where there were many celebrities. His dream was to be able to shoot a film for a big star. She rarely took the initiative to say so many words, but when she said so seriously, it showed that she had a strong will. Poplar Fruit knew Duan Xueqing very well. He even helped to persuade Pai Dinwan. In order not to expose himself, Pai Dinwan had to accept the invitation. With Givenchy's invitation, Tao Buoqing was no longer interested in staying here to watch other people on the main stage, so they went outside and prepared to go back. Miss, I'll go flag a taxi first. Unable to persuade Duan Xueqing, Tao Buoqing had to go to the side of the road to wait for a taxi. Duan Xueqing was wearing a long dress, so it was inconvenient for her to walk to the side of the road. Moreover, the car exhaust was stinky, so it was not good for her. After Tao Buoqing left, Pai Dinwan let go of Duan Xueqing's slender hand, hesitated for a moment, and said, Xiaoqing, no, Xiao Duan, are you angry with me? Is that why? Why you refused? Duan Xueqing lowered her head and looked at the hand in front of her. She didn't say anything. I was just. Pai Dinwan gritted his teeth and said frankly, I saw him calling you so warmly, so. I know. Duan Xueqing suddenly said. She raised her head and looked into Pai Dinwan's eyes. Pai Dinwan wanted to look away, but when he saw her beautiful and delicate face, he couldn't look away. I don't like crowds, Duan Xueching said softly. After a pause, she looked a little conflicted, but she still added 2 words, just. Not far away, a few people were randomly interviewing passers-by. This was the work of some intern reporters from the Omega Press. However, in this group of people today, there was an old reporter who had been in this industry for more than 10 years. Bashev was very depressed. He never thought that after 10 years he would return to square one. This was all because of that damn informant. Bashev cursed in his heart. If it weren't for the fact that the informant had sold the exclusive news to more than 20 other news agencies, he wouldn't have been scolded so harshly and thrown into the cold palace by the chief editor. Furthermore, he had to follow these interns and interview passers-by. If he didn't perform well, he wouldn't be able to return to his comfortable office job. If I see you, you're dead. That damned yellow-skinned monkey. Bashev spat out a mouthful of saliva and cursed. Then, he saw a figure that he had been dreaming about for a long time. At that time, Pai Dinwan had just sent Duan Xueching to the car, and was about to get in himself. It's him. Bashev would never forget the back of the guy that he hated to the core. He was stunned for a moment, then immediately rushed up. Bastard, get out of the car. However, just as he shouted, Pai Dinwan had already slammed the door, and the taxi drove away. Don't leave. Bashev rushed to the roadside, panting, but he couldn't even smell the fart of the taxi. Hey old man, did you slack off just now? Don't you want to work anymore? An intern reporter, who didn't take him seriously, shouted from afar. Bashev could only turn around and walk back. He really couldn't take this lying down. Wait. Bashev seemed to have an idea. He stood still. Just now the main stage of Givenchy was held in the Colossal Hall, right? Why is he here? Could it be? Bashev took a deep breath and thought in horror. Could it be that this leak was a conspiracy? However, Bashev had no evidence. He wasn't interested in exposing anyone. He just wanted to catch the guy who had caused him so much trouble and give him a good beating. Let me check. Bashev had been a reporter for so many years, and he had his own connections and information channels. He only needed to make 2 phone calls to find out about Givenchy's cocktail party tonight. He's likely to be there tonight. Bashev's eyes lit up. I just need to wait there for him to appear. The more Bashev thought about revenge, the more excited he became. He rushed back to the roadside and wanted to stop a taxi. Hey, old man. The intern editor rushed in front of him, looked at him angrily and asked, What are you doing? Bashev was tempted to give him a blow, throw out the words, I quit, and run off to carry out his plan of revenge. However, Bashev wasn't young anymore. His experience and reality made him understand that he was past the age of being impulsive. He really couldn't lose his current job. Although he had been demoted again and again, his salary hadn't changed. Plus, if he was given some time to calm down, he might be able to make a comeback. Sorry, I'll go back to work. Bashev loosened his clenched fists, lowered his head, and walked back. Pai Dinwan and the others went back to the hotel without knowing anything. Hurry up and take a shower. We'll go there early. Tao Wuxia was very excited. He said to Pai Dinwan. Pai Dinwan nodded. He sent Duan Xueching back, and then he went back to his room. Just as he sat down on the bed, Pai Dinwan's phone rang. The caller ID was an unrecorded number, but he couldn't be more familiar with it. Yes. Pai Dinwan answered the phone in a low voice. Yes. It seemed to be a perfunctory answer. Yes. It was still very casual. I told you. Pai Dinwan slightly raised his eyebrows. No, it didn't work. He sighed softly and whispered into the phone. After listening for a while, Pai Dinwan suppressed his anger and said, I told you. He's not jealous. What can I do? Pai Dinwan suddenly stood up and roared into the phone. I told you not to involve her. So what if it failed? No matter what. Just like you promised me before, this is the last time. Chapter 767. Originally, he had planned to meet up with Yin Xingyu and Vivian that night and treat them to dinner or something. However, because of the cocktail party, he had a conflict. Poplar Fruit called them and explained the situation to them. Then he asked Fang Min to help arrange for them to attend the fashion show in Givenchy's own hall the next day. Only then did he feel relieved. Poplar Fruit was the only one who was worried. He was worried that the two girls would think that he had sent them abroad and then abandon them. He did not know that without him, Fang Min had taken good care of the two girls. After all, Fang Min was a woman. She understood Yin Xingyu and Vivian's inner desires. After shopping for the whole day, the two girls were so happy that they did not want to go home. Poplar Fruit got out of Artel's Rolls-Royce. He was dressed in a suit just like Matisse and Vivian. However, Poplar Fruit's tall and slender figure made him look even more handsome. The only disharmony was the two gays who were whispering sweet nothings to each other behind him. These two fellows were actually dressed very handsomely. It was just that the flowery scarves around their necks had changed the style of their appearance. Matisse and Vivian were even afraid that others would not know that they were a couple. They were hugging each other and were not afraid of tripping while walking. A group of reporters surrounded the entrance. Although there was a red carpet at the entrance, the scale was not comparable to a real red carpet. However, under the crazy flashes of the reporters' cameras, the atmosphere was not much different from the red carpet of a movie premiere. It was no wonder that the reporters were so excited. After all, many celebrities came to Givenchy's cocktail party to support them. Other things aside, they had received news that Beckham's family would be coming. Just for Beckham, it was worth it for them to come. Poplar Fruit did not know that he had actually become popular. It was not only because of the live broadcast on the opening stage. The photos of him at the venue had already been circulated and instantly had millions and tens of millions of reposts. Especially the way he stood in front of the runway with his upper body naked and wolf head underwear. He was majestic, domineering, and murderous. Many women could not help but like and repost it. The Chinese man with the best body. The fighter jet of men. Oh, I'm wet. Does anyone have the same feeling as me? I want to bear his children. The waves of worship caused by the group of fujoshis came one after another. In less than a few hours, Poplar Fruit had become an internet celebrity in the Western world. It was no wonder that Poplar Fruit, a small model who was not a star at all, was showered with flashes as soon as he got out of the car. Poplar Fruit frowned. He pressed Kiki's little head against his chest, and then strode forward with Kiki in his arms, leaving behind a group of reporters who wanted to interview him, and let out a sigh of regret. Kiki is very beautiful today. The exquisite bohemian-style braids were also braided by Victor. Artel's nanny helped to pick out the pink lace gown, which made her look like a little princess. After dressing up, the little girl looked at herself in the floor-to-ceiling mirror. She remembered the scene when her father refused to admit that she was a princess. She excitedly pulled her father over, then lifted the hem of her gown, stuck out her belly, and said proudly, "Papa, look, Princess Kiki is so beautiful." She should walk on her own in a gown, otherwise her gown would be wrinkled. However, in order to protect Kiki's retina, Poplar Fruit still held her until they entered the hall. The reception was very boring for a guy like Poplar Fruit who was wandering on the edge of fashion. The main reason was that he knew few people, and he stayed in the place where there was a buffet. Few people would choose to eat and drink at a reception. "I'm hungry. I haven't had dinner yet," Poplar Fruit said to Matisse, who came to find him. He forked a piece of secret Brazilian barbecue and put it into his mouth. While eating, he wiped the grease on his mouth with a small cloth. "Papa, Kiki wants this strawberry cake." Kiki also held a small plate and a small fork, and said while licking the cream on her mouth. Poplar Fruit gently shoveled a small piece of cake into Kiki's plate with a small knife. The small cake was decorated with fresh and tender strawberries, which looked very tempting. "After eating this cake, you can't eat any more cake today. Later, Papa will give you bananas, apples, and watermelons. The fruit salad here is also delicious," Poplar Fruit said. Kiki only cared about eating, and a layer of white cream covered the edge of her mouth again. This family was all foodies. Poplar Fruit didn't have dinner that night, so he took Kiki to a place where there were few people to eat. Givenchy was rich, so the buffet not only looked exquisite, but also tasted delicious. What was hateful was that these rich people didn't care about eating and drinking, and left these delicious food alone. By the way, why are you looking for me? Poplar Fruit asked. Attracted by the table manners of Poplar Fruit and his daughter, Matisse also ate a crystal prawn ball that he liked. If Poplar Fruit hadn't mentioned it, Matisse wouldn't have remembered his task. Oh, I forgot. Mr. Ardel was looking for you just now. Surrounded by the enthusiastic Matisse, Poplar Fruit had to hold the hand of Kiki, who was also reluctant to leave, and walk to the center of the place. Chi-Chi looked back 3 times with every step she took, causing Yanghua to look back as well. He looked at the row of delicious food with nostalgia and thought, "What a waste! What a waste! If I don't eat, can I take it away?" In fact, Poplar Fruit also wanted to see Ardel, mainly because he wanted to build a relationship with Tao Buoqing and the others, who had arrived early. However, Ardel always had people around him, so he became the focus of attention today. Almost everyone raised a glass of red wine and wanted to chat with him. "Ardel, are you looking for me?" Poplar Fruit walked over and found Ardel, who was chatting with others. He stood aside and waited for Ardel to stop, then asked with a smile. Turning around, Ardel and the gray-haired old man standing next to him were smiling at the father and daughter pair, making Yanghua a little uncomfortable. He thought it was because he didn't wipe his mouth after eating, but he touched his mouth and found that there was nothing wrong with it. Kiki also felt uneasy. She hid behind her father, and then poked her head out from her father's leg to look at them. Haha. Ardel laughed. He walked over and put his arm around Poplar Fruit's shoulder to let him come closer, and said, "Leon, let me introduce you. This is Mr. Carrillo from Zara." "Hello, sir." Poplar Fruit bowed slightly, and then took the initiative to shake hands with Carrillo. He was respectful not because of Carrillo's status but because of his age. It wasn't until he straightened up that Poplar Fruit remembered what kind of company Zara was. Chapter 768. Zara was a clothing brand, and it was also a retail chain that specialized in its own clothing. Most people in China probably didn't know how strong it was. The Inditex group, which it belonged to, was the #1 clothing company in Spain. In the world, although it was only number 3, it had been developing rapidly in recent years. It was very likely that it would surpass Gap in the United States and H&M in Sweden to become the world's #1 clothing company in the next year. Zara's sales accounted for 66% of Inditex Group's total sales. It could be said that Givenchy was like a destroyer facing an aircraft carrier in front of Zara. That was how powerful Zara was. Poplar Fruit was well-read and knew a lot about Zara's history. Although he was surprised, he didn't deliberately show off. He still maintained his composure and talked to them calmly. "Mr. Carrillo is the president of Zara in China," Altiel introduced. "Leon, you know that I used to be active in Asia, so Mr. Carrillo and I have been friends for many years." "Leon, I can speak Chinese with you," Mr. Carrillo suddenly said in a very strange accent. "No, I speak French." Poplar Fruit's expression was a little strange. He didn't think that Carrillo's Chinese was that good. "Okay, you can speak English or Spanish." Ardel laughed and said in English, "Your Chinese is terrible. Although I can't understand what you're saying, it's a well-known fact. Carrillo, you may not know that Leon is a language genius. His Spanish will scare you." "Actually, Mr. Carrillo's Chinese is not bad." Poplar Fruit comforted him. He still spoke in English. "Mr. Carrillo, if you don't mind, can we speak English? Mr. Altiel doesn't understand Spanish." "It doesn't matter." Carrillo was elegant. Although he was old, he still looked like a handsome man when he was young. "Altiel, we have been friends for decades. I don't care about this. You may not understand," Altiel laughed. "Carrillo was with me in Mudong country but—" "Ahem. Altiel, there's a child here." Carrillo looked at Altiel speechlessly, and his old face blushed with embarrassment. This old handsome guy was really interesting. At this moment, a waiter came over with a tray. Ardel poured a glass of red wine for Poplar Fruit. "Ardel, I can't drink." Poplar Fruit waved his hand and said to the waiter, "Please bring me a non-alcoholic drink." "And this lovely lady." May I know what kind of drink you would like? Carrillo smiled as he pressed down on his stomach. He bent down and waved at Chi-Chi as he asked. I'm not a lady, I'm a princess. Kiki stood up bravely and said, I'm the beautiful Princess Kiki. Ardal chuckled. It was the first time she heard someone call herself a beautiful princess. However, Kiki's innocent words sounded like a child's play to these old people's ears. It's like this. She met Princess Charlotte today. Poplar Fruit lovingly stroked Kiki's hair and explained the origin of the joke to Ardal with a smile. Haha. Ardal laughed heartily, and Carrillo didn't say anything, but his face was red with laughter. In the end, he ordered a glass of coconut juice for Kiki. Poplar Fruit also returned to the topic. He asked, Mr. Carrillo, why are you looking for me? If it was Zara, it would be back to the clothing brand, which was essentially the same as Givenchy. If they were looking for him, it would be about modeling. Poplar Fruit felt helpless. Although he was indeed very talented, and his performance in the past half-month was shocking enough, he was just helping people to the end. He really had no interest in developing in the modeling industry. He had discussed this matter with Ardal a long time ago. The result of the discussion was that Ardal wouldn't force him to do something he didn't want to do, and Poplar Fruit could help him endorse Givenchy's clothes in China. All he needed to do was to shoot a commercial. It wouldn't take much time, so Poplar Fruit could accept it. But why did this old man have such a bad memory? Did he just turn around and sell himself to someone else? Poplar Fruit looked at Ardal with some resentment. Ardal didn't look at him. Instead, he and Carrillo looked at each other and smiled. Carrillo waved his hand and said with a smile, Leon, you misunderstood me. I didn't think of looking for you. There was a big difference between rejecting and being rejected, but Poplar Fruit didn't care so much. Instead, he breathed a sigh of relief. However, Carrillo's next words surprised him. I'm looking for Kiki, your daughter, the beautiful little princess. When Chi-Chi heard her name, she immediately turned her head back from looking around. Then, she heard that she was being praised for being beautiful. Princess equals beautiful. Chi-Chi's face immediately beamed with joy, and the straw she was biting on loosened. Poplar Fruit was shocked. The first thing that came to his mind was to guard against him and beat him to death. How dare you have ideas about my daughter? Then he reacted and asked curiously, looking for her? Why? Carrillo didn't answer directly. Instead, he smiled and said, Zara has a children's clothing brand called Zara_Kids. It focuses on high-end children's clothing for children aged 0 to 8 years old. We have the most fashionable children's clothing designer, and we have the concept of designing the most comfortable and fashionable clothes for children. Before Carrillo could finish his words, Yangguo already had a rough idea of what he was planning. I want Kiki to be the spokesperson for Zara_Kids in China. Carrillo said seriously. Wait a minute, how did you know about her? Poplar Fruit asked with a frown. As a father, Poplar Fruit's first thought was not whether it was appropriate for Kiki to accept this huge opportunity, but how did he know about Kiki? Although Poplar Fruit was in the limelight, Kiki rarely appeared in the eyes of the foreign media under his protection. Today, I was in the audience, Carrillo explained. At that time, I wanted to observe the Beckham's children. As you know, celebrities have a higher chance of cooperation and success. To be precise, it was easy to attract attention. Then I saw Kiki, Carrillo said with a smile. Very cute child. Some of my colleagues in China say that she has spiritual energy. He even spat out the word spiritual energy in Chinese. This is very rare. Carrillo said seriously. I hope to have a naive, lively, beautiful, and cute child as the spokesperson, but I also hope to have a spiritual child, because this is in line with our usual style. 1 in a million. Chapter 769. Poplar Fruit thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, Mr. Carrillo, I appreciate your appreciation of Kiki, but I still can't promise you. Without waiting for the other party to ask, Poplar Fruit took the initiative to explain. The main reason is that she is too young. Kiki is not even 2 years old yet. She doesn't know anything at all if we let her do the endorsement now. The main reason was that Poplar Fruit felt that it was not a good thing to let Kiki appear in the public so early. Kiki was too young. She was at an age where she didn't know anything and only knew how to play. Poplar Fruit wanted Kiki to enjoy her childhood. He didn't want her to passively do things that she didn't like. The family was not short of money. Poplar Fruit could earn enough money to feed the whole family. There was no need for Kiki to support the family. Although Kiki seemed to have learned a lot now, it could be said that Poplar Fruit forced her to learn few things. For example, Poplar Fruit didn't formally teach her English. It was only when he taught Fong Beibei and other children that she was influenced by him. This was a talent. Then, after going abroad, under the training of a big environment, she became fluent in English. Children don't need too complicated acting skills to shoot advertisements, Carrillo advised. Sometimes the children will hold the props, and sometimes the children will play together. It's almost like when you walk on the catwalk. Wearing our clothes and walking around in front of the camera is enough. Aldir advised. Leon, I think you're overthinking things. If Kiki doesn't understand, you can teach Kiki. You can walk so well on the runway yourself. Who knows, maybe Chi-Chi's talent is also very strong under your inheritance. Hearing her name being called, Kiki looked at the two grandpas and her father in confusion. She pulled her father's trousers and asked, Papa, what's wrong with Kiki? It's nothing, don't overthink it. Poplar Fruit lovingly patted Kiki's head and smiled. He took a sip of his drink, frowned and pondered for a while. Then he shook his head and said, Kiki doesn't know how to walk the runway, so there are no plans for her to learn this for the time being. You might not understand, but there's a saying in China that goes pulling up seedlings to help them grow. Seeing their confused looks, Poplar Fruit carefully explained the meaning of the idiom in Spanish and French. Then he switched back to English and said, Now is the critical period for her mental growth. She can't understand many things like us adults. You asked Kiki to learn the difficult catwalk show. If she can't learn it, her confidence will suffer a serious blow. Kiki pulled her father's trousers in confusion and asked, Papa, what do you mean by catwalk? Why does Kiki have to learn it? It's the catwalk show that Papa walked around on the stage today. Poplar Fruit bent down and explained to her. Papa didn't ask you to learn it. Kiki, don't be afraid. Oh. Kiki heard the first half of her father's explanation, and directly ignored the second half. She happily shook her little butt and said to her father as if showing off, Papa, Kiki also knows how to walk the catwalk show. As soon as her voice fell, the little fellow let go of her father's trousers and handed the coconut juice bottle in her hand to her father. Now that she was familiar with the two grandpas, she was not too shy. She lifted her skirt and swaggered in front of her father. Ardal and Carrillo stepped back with a smile, leaving the little fellow some space to perform. As a result, Poplar Fruit, who was just eager to protect his child, was stunned to see the following scene. Kiki stretched out her right leg. Her short white pantyhose and small black shoes stretched out from under her skirt. Kiki nodded her little head up and down with a bright smile, and stretched out her left hand and gently waved. As if it was the opening of a famous singer, the little fellow withdrew her hand, then shook her little butt and walked forward with her legs crossed. When she walked, Kiki didn't know where her confidence came from. She straightened her chest and raised her cute little face, but her eyes kept looking at her father, as if she was asking for encouragement. After a few steps, Kiki suddenly stopped. With one hand on her waist and the other hand under her chin, she tilted her small waist, as if she was making a cool pose. Poplar Fruit's face was dripping with sweat. This pose was one of the witty and naughty clothes he performed today. How did the little fellow Kiki learn it? If one were to say that adults were displaying their mature charm by gesturing like this, then Chi-Chi's current appearance had turned into a bold and adorable little adult's interest that made one unable to restrain a smile. Not only that, but Chi-Chi's stage presence was also quite good. When Ardal and Carrillo were applauding for her, she still held back her emotions and turned around to walk back. Her little butt was swaying from side to side like a real model. Very good, very good. The two grandpas couldn't help praising her. Wow. Kiki shyly ran into her father's arms. She was actually very happy, but she was too embarrassed to show it. I told you, like father like son, Ardal said proudly. Poplar Fruit, you still don't admit it. Kiki is born to be a model. That's enough. You don't have to praise her. Poplar Fruit couldn't help but laugh. He gently patted Kiki's butt and said, "Look at her, her butt is almost pointing to the sky." Kiki didn't want to. She turned over and leaned into her father's arms, her two little hands grabbing her father's face and twisting it. "Ha!" Poplar Fruit avoided her hands and then asked, "Kiki, I have a question. You must have learned some of the catwalks from Dad, but who taught you the ones you did at the beginning?" Poplar Fruit also remembered that when Kiki went to practice with him in the morning, she didn't follow her father because Fong Min, the nanny, hadn't come yet. "Sister Luo Danny." Kiki raised her head and said to her father, "Sister Luo Danny has a lot of performances. She's much better than Kiki." "Kiki, don't be discouraged. You've just started. You will definitely surpass Luo Danny in the future," Ardal said with a smile. However, Poplar Fruit rolled his eyes at him and told Kiki not to be discouraged. Didn't he want her to continue learning to be a model? Poplar Fruit didn't want to. Poplar Fruit thought that this was also a talent, or that the father and daughter both had a super learning ability. Looking at Kiki's current language ability, wasn't she born to be a translator? Kiki's future should be decided by herself, and Poplar Fruit believed that there was no limit to it. However, Kiki's surprising performance made him more determined to persuade Poplar Fruit. Chapter 770. Despite Carrillo's warm invitation, Poplar Fruit didn't agree in the end. Of course, he didn't reject him directly. He told the truth that he hadn't thought it through yet, and he needed time to think about it. Carrillo didn't insist. He smiled and agreed with Poplar Fruit that they would continue to discuss this issue in Yangcheng, China. Other than Carrillo and the Beckhams, who were coming over tonight, Poplar Fruit was almost invisible at the party. Of course, there were still many representatives of management companies who wanted to sign Poplar Fruit. However, Ardal knew what Poplar Fruit was thinking, so he stopped them for him. The only thing Poplar Fruit took the initiative to introduce Tao Buocheng to Ardal was to introduce him to Tao Buocheng. It wasn't really Poplar Fruit's credit. He played a role in it at most. The main reason why Ardal accepted the Duan family was because of the Duan family's strength. Ardal, who used to be in charge of the Asian region, had heard of the Duan family, one of the top families in China. Naturally, he knew that at least in the middle and lower reaches of the Yangtze River, the Duan family's boutiques were at the ruling level. Later, Poplar Fruit asked Ardal curiously, "Aren't you worried that the boutiques will clash with Givenchy's boutiques?" Ardal smiled calmly and said, "Givenchy, a first-tier city, is already too busy. Why don't we open up the boutiques to these boutiques and let them help us expand the market in second- and third-tier cities? You know, there are a lot of rich people in second- and third-tier cities in China." Poplar Fruit was deeply impressed by this statement. Pai Dinwan actually came with Tao Buocheng. However, Pai Dinwan didn't join in the conversation between Tao Buocheng and Ardal. On one hand, there was a language barrier. Tao Buocheng could represent the Duan family, so his French was normal, but Pai Dinwan couldn't understand. On the other hand, he wasn't a member of the Duan family, so he wasn't interested in the conversation. Using the excuse of going to the washroom, Pai Dinwan wandered around the edge of the reception. First, he greeted Poplar Fruit, the foodie father and daughter, who had sneaked to the buffet to look for food. Then, he sat alone on a chair at the side, watching the bustling banquet and the people chatting happily in twos and threes. She suddenly felt that she was really out of place in this place. Pai Dinwan told Duan Xuecheng that he wanted to attend the Bali Fashion Week and the cocktail party. In fact, if he had the freedom to choose, Bai Tingyuan would prefer to sit in that quaint tea house and drink tea, accompanied by the steam of the water, accompanied by the company of beautiful women. Only when he was in a crowd would he feel lonely. It was just like when she was still a pure wedding photographer, controlling the camera and looking at the happy couples in the viewfinder. She felt as if she was out of this world. Others felt that the sea of the Maldives was blue, beautiful, romantic, and poetic. But standing in the sea, he only felt cold and wet. His eyes were filled with confusion, and his thoughts were tangled together like silk. Pai Dinwan sat there and drank a few glasses of red wine. Until he was a little drunk, he stood up shakily. Forget it, don't think about it. Go back to sleep. Pai Dinwan was not drunk. He still kept his mind clear, but he did not want to stay in this noisy place any longer. Without saying goodbye to Poplar Fruit and Tao Buocheng, he walked out of the door of the Givenchy Hall alone, and disappeared in the bright lights of the Champs-Élysées. On the other hand, Poplar Fruit was full. He and Kiki had just secretly eaten a lobster. Of course, more than 90% of the meat was eaten by Poplar Fruit. If someone saw Poplar Fruit's performance tonight, they would definitely be shocked. Kiki patted her little mouth and yawned. She sat on the sofa, hugged her father's arm and murmured, "Papa, Kiki is sleepy." Kiki only took a short nap at noon. Now that she was full, it was easy for her to feel tired. Moreover, it was almost 9 o'clock, and Chi-Chi should be going back to sleep. Poplar Fruit came down first. He reached out his hand to help Kiki, who jumped down gently and said with a smile, "Let's go. Papa will take you back to sleep." He was not as carefree as Pai Dinwan. Before leaving, he had to find Ardal, Ricardo, and other key figures of Givenchy. "Don't forget that there is a show tomorrow." Ardal reminded him mainly because Poplar Fruit had moved back to the Shangri-La Hotel. "But you don't have to come so early. It's not the main stage. Just come before 10 o'clock. It was not that Ardal disliked Poplar Fruit and didn't want him to stay in the villa. It was the same reason as before. The show would be held in Givenchy's hall, so it was more convenient to stay in a hotel. Poplar Fruit nodded and said with a smile, "Ardal, when have you seen me late?" In this regard, Ardal trusted Yang Guo. It was just that he drank a little and became a little naggy, that's all. Poplar Fruit came with Matisse and the others. But when he saw that Matisse and the others were still mingling in the party like fish in water, he thought for a while and smiled. Then he took Kiki's little hand and left with her. Poplar Fruit refused Ardal's offer to send him back. He didn't pick up Kiki. He just held his daughter's hand and slowly walked back to the Champs-Élysées under the night lights. It was rare that he could take a leisurely walk with his daughter, and it could also help with the digestion of all the food he had just eaten. Why not? Of course, the little fellow wanted to slack off. She was sleepy, so she kept using her soft voice to act coquettishly, wanting her father to hug her. However, her father just played with her, grinning and not letting her succeed. Instead, Chi-Chi became more energetic while playing. It was also because they were on the fashionable and romantic street of the Champs-Élysées. Everyone was wearing beautiful and gorgeous clothes. Poplar Fruit's suit and leather shoes, and Kiki's princess dress, were not considered strange. On the contrary, the laughter of the father and daughter was exchanged with kind smiles from passers-by from time to time. However, when they turned onto the winding path that led to the Shangri-La Hotel, although the street lights were bright, there was a lack of pedestrians and cars. It was as if they had walked from the bustling present to the quiet and elegant past. Chi-Chi, who was originally having a lot of fun, was now a little scared as she stuck close to her father. When they were about to turn into an alley, Poplar Fruit suddenly stopped. He frowned and took Kiki's hand and covered Kiki's mouth, motioning her not to make a sound. "Help! Help!" Accompanied by shouting and kicking, a few weak cries for help came out. Chapter 771. In the silent darkness, in the deep alleyway, the sound was somewhat clear. The muffled sound of punches and kicks could be heard clearly. Robbery? Yang Guo frowned. The reason was because he heard the man's cries for help. Not only was it in English, but it was also mixed with Chinese. If it was a foreigner calling for help, Poplar Fruit would have to consider the situation. It was not that he did not want to help, but whether he should take the risk. After all, Kiki was beside her father. But when he heard the familiar Chinese, Poplar Fruit could not sit back and do nothing. In a foreign country, it was Poplar Fruit's duty to help his compatriots who were in trouble. "Kiki, hold on tight to your father." Poplar Fruit squatted down and carried Kiki. Since he decided to intervene, Poplar Fruit had to protect Kiki. Originally, Poplar Fruit's first thought was to let Kiki hide in the alley and not get involved in the fight. But after thinking about it, it was not safe either. Maybe there were people lying in ambush outside. If they came from behind and Kiki was caught, it would be dangerous. When he met the killer in America, Poplar Fruit left Kiki in the room downstairs, which made him regret it for the rest of his life. Poplar Fruit swore to himself that he would never leave Kiki in a dangerous place. Holding Kiki in his arms, Poplar Fruit was confident in his skills, even though he almost broke one of his arms. Without a gun, Poplar Fruit was confident that he could take down 3 to 5 adult men with one hand. But with a gun, even if Poplar Fruit had 3 heads and 6 arms, he would not be able to escape from this narrow alley. Fortunately, France was different from the US. Most of the countries in Europe had very strict gun control. So Poplar Fruit dared to help. Kiki hugged her father's neck tightly. She also heard the fighting over there. Kiki put her mouth close to her father's ear and said in a trembling voice, "Papa, Kiki is scared." "Don't be afraid, Daddy is here." Poplar Fruit comforted Kiki in a low voice. "Kiki, don't make a sound later. Daddy will deal with these guys soon." Poplar Fruit stealthily crept over without making any sound. On the other hand, Kiki's nervous breathing was a little loud, and it sounded like a ventilator beside her father's ear. However, the 3 black figures on the other side seemed to have gotten a little high from the beating. They were excitedly kicking the Chinese compatriot on the ground, who had already curled up into a ball. There's a lot of cliché in movies where good and bad people talk a lot of crap at parties. Of course, in movies it was usually the good guy who won. Usually, the more crap the bad guy said, the more miserable his ending would be. Real life was not like movies. However, Poplar Fruit still understood this principle. One had to be ruthless enough to surprise the enemy. What was the point of talking so much nonsense? Moreover, Poplar Fruit also had concerns. He did not want his identity to be exposed. If the other party shamelessly went to the police, although Poplar Fruit was not guilty, going to the police station would definitely affect Givenchy's show. Poplar Fruit sneaked behind the other party. Suddenly, he stretched out his right hand and chopped the back of the neck of the guy closest to him. Puff! Only a muffled sound of flesh hitting leather was heard. The guy who was hit by Yongguo's hand blade didn't even make a sound before he fell to the ground. Poplar Fruit practiced pure martial arts. These small tricks were all learned from his brothers in the Special Forces. Taking advantage of the few seconds when the other party was stunned by Poplar Fruit's sneak attack, Poplar Fruit raised his hand and chopped down the second person. Actually, compared to the first one, the second one was much easier to deal with. The first one was burly and looked quite strong. If Poplar Fruit had not chopped his vertebrobasilar artery and knocked him out instantly, it would have taken more effort for Poplar Fruit. The second one looked tall but was as thin as a bamboo pole. In fact, he was just a weak scholar. Not to mention a chop. Even a punch would have knocked him out. The third person was exactly the same as the first one. He was so strong that his stomach was bulging, but his arms were as thick as an otaku's thigh. He was shocked by Poplar Fruit's lightning attack and quickly retreated to a distance. If he was not carrying Kiki in his arms, and if the alley was not narrow, Poplar Fruit would not give him time to react. After pushing away the second person who had fainted in front of him, Poplar Fruit did not stop and rushed forward. "Friend." Before the man could make a defensive move or finish his sentence, he suddenly blacked out. He saw Poplar Fruit rushing forward. Like kicking a football, he swung his right leg in a semicircle and pulled the bowstring. Poplar Fruit raised his right leg high and kicked the man's chin. It was as if he had been hit by a heavy hammer from bottom to top. The 170-pound man was sent flying backwards by Yongguo's kick, and then heavily smashed to the ground. He didn't even make a sound before fainting. "Ah!" Kiki screamed. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit covered Kiki's mouth in time. "It's okay, Kiki, don't be afraid." Poplar Fruit whispered to Kiki. "Hey, are you okay? Can you stand up?" Poplar Fruit looked at the 2 exits of the alley cautiously. He squatted down and whispered to the unlucky guy who was curled up on the ground in Chinese. "Cough, cough." He slowly stretched his body in pain. "It's okay, I didn't hit any vital parts." "Ah." Poplar Fruit, who was more sensitive to people's voices, suddenly widened his eyes. "You are Brother Bai? Why are you here?" "Poplar Fruit." The man shook his head. He had finally recovered from his dizzy state. He looked at the person who had saved him in surprise. The alley was so dark that he couldn't even see his own fingers. Pai Din-1 could only vaguely see two pairs of bright eyes, one big and one small. They looked very sincere. Pai Din-1 was very unlucky today. When he went out, he didn't call a taxi because he drank a little. Instead, he staggered on the street and felt the night wind. The night on the Champs-Élysées was too busy. Pai Din-1 didn't know how he left the noisy place and came to this remote intersection. He also didn't know that the moment he walked out of the Givenchy Hall, he was targeted by his enemy. After Bashev finished his work, he came a little late. The party had already started, but he didn't give up. He insisted on mingling with the reporters outside and watching. When he saw Pai Din-1 leave, Bashev recognized him at a glance. Not only did Bashev follow Pai Din-1, but he also called two of his neighbors. In fact, these two were gangsters who often extorted pocket money from elementary school students. He spent a few €100 notes to hire two strong men to help him block Pai Din-1 in the alley. He wanted to beat Pai Din-1 up with his own hands to vent his anger. However, when he was having a good time, Poplar Fruit appeared like a ghost. Chapter 772. Let's go. We'll talk after we get out of here. Poplar Fruit was worried that something bad would happen. He put down Kiki, held his daughter's hand with his right hand, and then put his left hand under Pai Din-1's armpit to help him up. Pai Din-1 was actually beaten a little hard. There were bruises on his face and body. When he walked, he couldn't help but groan when he touched the bruises. When they reached a brighter street park, they found a chair and sat down. Poplar Fruit also saw that there were footprints all over his clothes. Why did you come to such a remote place? It's so dark and there's no one around. It's easy to get robbed. Poplar Fruit sighed and said, Good people are fine. If I hadn't passed by on my way back to the hotel, you wouldn't have known how badly you would have been beaten up by these robbers. Poplar Fruit himself rarely walked in such dark alleys. If he hadn't heard his cry for help, Poplar Fruit would have walked back to the hotel along the main road. When Pai Din-1 heard Poplar Fruit mention robbers, his eyes were a little strange, but he immediately covered it up. He shook his head and said, I drank some wine and wanted to get some fresh air. I walked and walked and walked and went astray. You can't drink too much wine. Anyway, I've quit drinking now. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, Especially now that you have Shueching to worry about. You have to pay more attention to control yourself. Don't drink too much and harm others. After a moment of silence, Pai Din-1 suddenly asked, Why did you save me? Your question is very strange. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, When I see injustice on the road, of course I have to pull out my sword to help. What's more, you're Shueching's boyfriend. Pai Din-1 was speechless. He looked at Poplar Fruit's handsome face and was a little speechless. Poplar Fruit was a handsome guy. Pai Din-1 used to think that he was a little handsome, but compared to Poplar Fruit, he really felt inferior. Not only his face, but also his height. Pai Din-1 was not as tall as Poplar Fruit. He was only half a head taller than Duan Shueching, who was almost 1.7 meters. Bai Tingyuan suddenly felt a little disheartened. He looked at the dark sky in a daze. Bai Tingyuan looked at the other side of the dark sky. What's wrong? Did you injure your internal organs? Yang Guo frowned and asked. I'll take you to the hospital. No need, I'm fine. Pai Din-1 sighed and said. He turned to look at Poplar Fruit with a puzzled expression and asked, Poplar Fruit, I have a question that I don't understand. I hope that you can tell me the answer. Speak. Shueching is such an outstanding girl. Why did you give up on her? Don't you know how sad she was when she returned from Yangqing? Asked Pai Din-1. If Duan Shueching was here, she would definitely be surprised that Pai Din-1 was so familiar with her and Poplar Fruit's history. In fact, Pai Din-1 didn't know about it from Duan Shueching. He had previously learned about the love and hatred between Poplar Fruit and Duan Shueching. Most of it was just speculation. Poplar Fruit was stunned. He thought that Pai Din-1 was jealous. He shook his head and smiled. It's not as complicated as you think. Shueching and I are only senior brother and junior sister. But Shueching likes you. Pai Din-1 said with certainty. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, Brother Bai, You're thinking too much. I really don't have such a complicated relationship with Xueqing. Besides, I already have a girlfriend. Is it because of your girlfriend? If Xueqing had confessed to you before the two of you, would you still be senior brother and junior sister? Pai Dinwan didn't know if he had eaten gunpowder or something, but his words were aggressive. If you didn't have your current girlfriend, would you give up on Xueqing? His voice was a little loud. It was so noisy that Kiki, who was about to fall asleep in her father's embrace, opened her eyes and looked around in a daze. Poplar Fruit bitterly smiled. He shook his head and pressed Pai Dinwan down. Brother Bai, there aren't so many ifs in this world. It's impossible between Xueqing and me. Poplar Fruit seriously looked at Pai Dinwan and said, there really aren't so many ifs in this world. I've met a girl that I cherish, and there's no place for anyone else in my heart. You might not understand, but it's hard to meet a woman who shares the same interests and can love you for the rest of your life. Furthermore, it's very important. Poplar Fruit stroked Kiki's soft hair and smiled from the bottom of his heart. She's the same as me. We both love my daughter and treat her as our own. She's already so perfect. I can't bear to have a change of heart and hurt her. Poplar Fruit seriously said. I think you're worrying too much. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, I've known Xueqing for so many years, and you're the first man that Xueqing didn't reject. Pai Dinwan was stunned and didn't respond. Xueqing's personality is rather cold. It's not easy for her to accept you. Poplar Fruit earnestly said. You also happen to like her a lot, and you're very compatible with her aura. This is even more rare. Since it's already started, why worry about the past? Poplar Fruit said. You shouldn't worry about whether Xueqing will have any feelings for me. Instead, you should do your best to cherish and protect this relationship. Pai Dinwan avoided Poplar Fruit's gaze. Ahem. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and felt that he was acting up again. He was addicted to being a teacher, and now he was lecturing others at length. Actually, that's what I mean. I don't think I can do it. Pai Dinwan suddenly said. Hey, how can a man say that? Poplar Fruit thought that he was timid or had lost his confidence after being hit by him. He patted Pai Dinwan's shoulder and said with a smile, Don't back down. Xueqing isn't a flood beast. As long as you give your heart, she'll feel it. She's actually a girl with a cold face but a warm heart. Oh right. Poplar Fruit remembered what he had always wanted to say. He smiled and said, I do have a very good relationship with Xueqing. When we were in school, I always treated her as my own sister. So, Poplar Fruit purposely put on a straight face, but he didn't have any aura at all. Brother Bai, you have to take good care of our Xueqing. You can't let her down. If you break Xueqing's heart, I promise that I'll find you and beat you up no matter where you are. Poplar Fruit tried his best to appear fierce, but he couldn't raise his aura at all. He wanted to laugh when he saw Pai Dinwan's bruised face. I should go back. Pai Dinwan was stunned for a moment, then he shook his head and broke free from Poplar Fruit's support. Let me send you back. Poplar Fruit said. No need. It's just an external injury. It's not a big deal. I'll get a taxi myself. Pai Dinwan shook his head and rejected Poplar Fruit's good intentions. Pai Dinwan staggered towards the end of the street. Looking at his back, there was a sense of desolation. Poplar Fruit didn't know why he became so cold. However, he touched his chin and muttered in his heart, They really are a pair. Even their temperaments are the same. Chapter 773. Teacher. Senior. Yin Xingyu and Yi Jing greeted him excitedly backstage. However, they had a little disagreement about how they addressed Poplar Fruit, but they didn't need to care about the details. In school, the students in the French class called him by many different names. Yang Guo only appeared on stage 3 times, satisfying the audience's cheers, and the morning's work was already over. The same was true for the other top models. They were actually very relaxed during the fashion week. On the main stage, they had to do their best because of the attention of the audience and the live TV broadcast. When it came to their own catwalks, they would choose a few days to do a few shows, but they didn't have to work as hard as on the main stage. It wasn't just a matter of price. Givenchy would also give other models a chance on such an ordinary catwalk. Otherwise, why would it recruit nearly 100 models? Poplar Fruit was a special case. Because of his extraordinary performance on the main stage, it was said that the French TV news broadcast him. Videos and photos of his catwalk were even more popular on the internet. Many foreign tourists came to the Givenchy Hall just to see this legendary guy. Givenchy had adjusted its strategy for this. After discussing with Poplar Fruit, Ardell arranged 3 shows for him every day until the end of the fashion week. Poplar Fruit wasn't worried that Givenchy was overvaluing him. Ardell was a good friend to him. Ardell didn't ask for his permission, and even gave him a lot of bonuses. The benefits of Ardell's design and Poplar Fruit's performance were considerable. Among other things, the sudden increase in the number of customers in the morning had increased Givenchy's turnover by 20%. Finally, I see you. Poplar Fruit wiped his face with a wet towel. He pushed Kiki's shoulder and smiled. Kiki, why don't you greet your sister? Hello, sister. Kiki didn't know them well, because they didn't talk much. She leaned against her father and greeted them politely. Hello, Kiki. Senior brother, you're amazing. Yin Xingyu said excitedly to Poplar Fruit. The country is in an uproar, and the news on the internet is discussing your background. Hee, don't pay too much attention to what the news says. Most of the time, it doesn't match the facts. Poplar Fruit shook his head and laughed. Some time ago, he had caused an uproar in the city and had an indescribable feeling of displeasure towards the news media. I think so too. Yi Jing stood up from squatting to greet Kiki. She curled her lips and said, Look at those people's faces. They said that you're not the best and that you're not an amateur. It's good enough that you didn't embarrass our country. I think teacher is the best. So many white and black models can't compare to you. Yi Jing said with admiration. Yi Jing, let's talk about this in private. Don't say it out loud. Otherwise, it will cause trouble for Poplar Fruit. Fang Min, who was accompanying them, looked around nervously and said, Pay attention to your words when you're abroad. It won't be good if someone who understands Chinese hears you. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, Well, don't give the 2 children so much pressure. Wait a moment, I'll change my clothes and treat you to a meal. Poplar Fruit treated Yin Xingyu and Yin Xingyu as children. In fact, he was about the same age as them. The place to eat was chosen by Fang Min. Although Fang Min didn't speak the language, she was familiar with the surroundings. Don't eat first, I want to take photos. They were eating Western food. Since they were in Bali, they naturally wouldn't go to a Chinese Sichuan restaurant to eat. Yin Xingyu was more lively. She picked up her mobile phone and took photos of the delicious food on the table excitedly. Kiki was stunned. She didn't know that mobile phones could be used like this. Teacher, I think you don't have to worry. Isn't there a saying that gold will always shine? Your strength is here. One day, they will take the initiative to correct your name. Yi Jing was still comforting Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Even Fang Min chimed in and said, Poplar Fruit, Yi Jing is right. The domestic environment is like this. They can't stand other people doing well. Especially when you don't have any experience in the entertainment circle before. They will use you as an example. But it doesn't matter. I heard from Mr. Ardell that they are also contacting the media to create momentum for you in China. Yang Gua knew what was going on, but he wasn't interested in the hype at all. Besides, Ardell only wanted to fight back and sell the clothes. He wasn't trying to create hype for Yang Gua. Yang Gua smiled and said, You don't have to worry about me. Right now, no matter what they say, I will remain unmoved. So let them say whatever they want. What about you guys? Where did you go yesterday? Poplar Fruit asked curiously. Shopping. Yin Xingyu finally put down the selfie and said happily, Sister Fang Min took us shopping in Bali. It turns out that besides the Champs-Élysées, there are so many places to buy bags and clothes. It's so much cheaper than in China. Senior, look, Sister Fang Min gave this to us. Yin Xingyu took out a big wallet with the Givenchy logo from her carry-on bag and showed it to Poplar Fruit. I have one too. Yi Jing also took out hers. Poplar Fruit frowned and looked at Fang Min. Fang Min smiled. She knew what Poplar Fruit meant. She took the initiative and said, It's okay. It's not expensive. I want to get a very cheap price here. No matter how cheap it was, such a big wallet with a price tag of more than 500 euros would cost more than 200 euros. Poplar Fruit had paid attention to these prices when he bought things for his family. Fang Min gave out 2 bags, and she paid at least 3,000 renminbi. Although Sister Fang Min gave it to you. Poplar Fruit laughed and showed a sly expression. He said, "But I still have the right to use it." Ah. Why? The big wallets were picked by the 2 girls themselves. How could they be willing to give it away? One must know that one bag sold for more than 5,000 renminbi in China. Don't be nervous. I won't take it from you now, Poplar Fruit said ruthlessly. From now on, there are 5 days before you return to China. Poplar Fruit gestured with his palm and shook it maliciously. He said, "In these 5 days you have a task. Yin Xingyu wants to force you to talk to French people and practice your oral English until you can carry out the most basic daily conversation. Yijing, you have to watch more and read more. At least in the end, I want to see that you don't need to ask and can understand the meaning of the signs in your daily life. This is a test for you. If I recognize your progress before you go home, then you can take this bag back. If you can't, then this bag will have to be returned to Sister Fang Min," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Chapter 774. Although Yin Xingyu and Yi Jing both cried out with deep resentment, they had no choice but to accept Poplar Fruit's setting. Fang Min just sat on the side, smiling and not responding to their conversation, as if she had nothing to do with it. However, although Yin Xingyu and the others accepted this fact, they still looked at Fang Min with some resentment, as if they were complaining that Fang Min didn't speak up for them. "Don't blame me. I'm sure you know your teacher's character better than I do." Fang Min shrugged her shoulders and smiled. "It's useless no matter what I say, and you should be glad that he at least gave you a chance." Poplar Fruit didn't know that when he was wiping the dripping soup for Kiki, Fang Min was winking at Yin Xingyu and whispering, "Don't worry, he's stubborn. He'll still give it to you when the time comes." After a while, Fang Min took out her mobile phone again, tapped on it and winked at them. Poplar Fruit saw it this time, but he didn't understand what the women were trying to express. Ahem. Yin Xingyu was the vanguard again. She clenched her fist and coughed twice, took out her mobile phone and said to Poplar Fruit, "Senior, there's something that I don't know if I should tell you." She even used honorifics. This posture was a bit deep. Was she worried that he would come up with some strange ideas to make their lives difficult? Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Okay, I'm not a big tiger. Just say it." Before we came to Bali, there was a Weibo post on the internet. Yin Xingyu secretly glanced at Poplar Fruit, not daring to look directly at Poplar Fruit. "Why do you mention this again?" Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Didn't I say to ignore them? I'm fine with it, but you're worried about me." "It's not about you, teacher." Yi Jing continued. She was bolder. "It's about your girlfriend, Fang Beibei." Poplar Fruit frowned and asked, "My girlfriend?" "Yes. Wang Yuba told us." Yin Xingyu handed the phone over and said, "But he told us not to tell you the news because he was afraid that it would affect your mood. But elder sister Fang Min said that it doesn't matter now, and it's good to let you know." Fang Min was speechless. She looked at my daughter, who was inexperienced in the ways of the world. Even if it was just one thing, they still had to expose her. Poplar Fruit took Yin Xingyu's phone and saw the scandal between Fang Beibei and Wang Di. He couldn't help but frown. His initial emotion was anger, and this anger also affected the others present. Yin Xingyu and the others shrunk their heads, thinking that Poplar Fruit was really going to fly into a rage. Poplar Fruit was really angry, but he didn't know who he was angry at. Most of it was the blogger, and a lot of it was Wang Di, who appeared in a photo intimately with Fang Beibei. Of course, Poplar Fruit was also a little angry at Fang Beibei. He did have some misunderstandings at the beginning. On second thought, Poplar Fruit's anger subsided a lot. On the contrary, he began to blame himself. How could this be? Poplar Fruit blamed himself for not trusting Fang Beibei. How could you be suspicious of Bao Bao just because of someone else's post? Poplar fruit, you should trust Bao Bao unconditionally. Perhaps it was because love was too deep, and sometimes it was easy to lose your mind. But when he thought about it seriously, Fong Beibei wasn't the kind of person who would deceive her own feelings. No matter who the person in the photo was, Poplar fruit felt that he should trust Bao Bao first, and then find out the truth behind this matter. If they lost their basic trust and love, then anyone could break up their hand that they were holding. Then, Poplar fruit carefully looked at the Weibo post, and he laughed in surprise. As a professional linguist, he could tell that this Weibo post was fabricated from the wording and the structure of the discussion. It was true and false, but most of it was lies. If he didn't know Fong Beibei well, Poplar fruit could still tell that it was nonsense. Secondly, in this photo, although it wasn't photoshopped, Poplar fruit could tell that this photo wasn't an intimate photo of Fong Beibei and Wang Di. In the photo, Fong Beibei seemed to be sitting close to Wang Di, but in fact Poplar fruit knew that this was just an illusion caused by the angle. The person who took the photo was Wang Di. Poplar fruit had seen him before, and it was Fong Beibei who brought him to see him. With Fong Beibei's open mind, how could she do anything to betray him? Poplar fruit suddenly felt that his emotional intelligence was starting to be worthy of the audience. From this photo, he could see Fong Beibei's confusion and a trace of helplessness. After all, they were a couple, so Poplar fruit knew as much about Fong Beibei as she did herself. Poplar fruit burst out laughing, and he understood the cause and effect of this photo. This Wang Di probably wanted to pursue Bao Bao, and then Bao Bao was at a loss because of his strange behavior, but she couldn't say anything about it. Poplar fruit thought to himself, so Bao Bao called me over to make Wang Di give up. Sigh. I was wondering why this girl was acting a little strange at that time. She's going to be spanked in a few days. Poplar fruit looked at the phone with a smile, which made Yin Xingyu and the others feel a little creeped out. Yanggua didn't know either. He was just casually guessing, but his guess was almost the same as the truth. But this Wang Di is too much. He posted such a mushy Weibo. Poplar fruit shook his head. This was the only thing that dissatisfied Poplar fruit. But he thought about it and muttered in his heart, forget it, the ignorant are innocent. I'll let him go this time. If he messes around again. Yi Jing plucked up her courage and waved her hand in front of Poplar fruit. She muttered to Yin Xingyu, oh no, did the teacher overstimulate himself and do that? You're the one who's crazy. Poplar fruit raised his head and said to Yi Jing angrily. He handed Yin Xingyu's phone back, but his face was still full of smiles. You're not angry? Feng Min asked, puzzled. When she heard the two girls talking about Poplar fruit's girlfriend, she realized that they weren't talking about Zheng Yujie. She wanted Zheng Yujie to be with the talented Poplar fruit, so she wanted to stimulate Poplar fruit. Maybe they would break up when they returned to China. That was why she had winked at the two girls just now. I'm not angry, Poplar fruit said with a smile. Anyway, it's not real. Ah, it's fake? Many people in our school are reposting it. Yin Xingyu asked. I told you not to believe in these rumors. Poplar fruit pointed at Yin Xingyu and criticized her angrily. How many things on the internet can be taken as real? Isn't it just a hype created by the internet water army for you to see? This matter is fake. This is her senior brother. They only formed this team to participate in the competition. You guys are really thinking too much about other things. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.